The old man was obviously lying. But I haven't sensed Brother Zara. Ernest Lin sighed. This is also one of the key reasons for me to have suspected him since the beginning. I've looked for him everywhere, but there's no sign of him. In the end, some new gods told me that they had been attacked by your brother. Fortunately, nothing bad had happened to them. The old man nodded and said, "If I find him, I won't let him off easily." The old man said angrily, "Okay, father, you don't have to say any more. Leave the task of finding brother to me." Ernest Lin lowered her head and said, "Very well." Hearing Ernest Lin's words, the old man nodded. At this moment he was extremely excited. He had just sent Lin Ming away, and now Ernest Lin was also going to leave. This was simply heaven helping him. As long as Ernest Lin and the Thunder God weren't around, he could be unrestrained. Go along then. The old man waved his hand and said, the Thunder God had disappeared without a trace till now. He had been searching for a long time for the boy but still couldn't find him. As such, he believed that Ernest Lin would probably need a long time to find the Thunder God. Moreover, he hadn't made up the story of the Thunder God attacking the new gods. The Thunder God simply wouldn't come back of his own accord. He would definitely continue to hide. "Father, look, who is this?" Ernest Lin didn't move an inch. With a tap of her finger, a figure appeared. One had to know that the Thunder God had been trapped in Lin Min's small world. Therefore, the old fellow couldn't sense even a trace of the Thunder God's aura. As such, Ernest Lin's action made the old fellow dumbfounded. This? Looking at the heavily bound and defenseless Thunder God, the old man frowned and even stood up. He had originally wanted the matter of the Thunder God to delay Ernest Lin for some time, but now he could see that Ernest Lin had come prepared. To think she could just make the Thunder God appear out of nowhere and throw him on the ground. Due to Ernest Lin's actions, it was as if he had been fiercely slapped in the face from his own words. "Ernest Lin, where did you catch him?" The old guy obviously felt that he had lost his composure, so he coughed and said, "Humph. He killed my reincarnation and had been caught by me." Ernest Lin coldly snorted and said, "Is this true?" The old man frowned. The Thunder God had actually made a move his own sister? Could it be that the Thunder God's path was even more extreme than his own? At least in his plan, he had no intention of wiping out neither the Thunder God nor Ernest Lin. Yet not only had the Thunder God attacked a few new gods, he even killed his sister's reincarnation. "Hand him over to me." The old fellow frowned and said. Ernest Lin didn't directly hand the Thunder God over to the old fellow. Instead, she changed her words and said, "I have something to say to brother. After that, I will naturally hand him over to father." "Ernest Lin, you did well." The old fellow didn't say anything else. "This is the highest glory of the new god faction, the crown of the gods." As the old man said this, a crown appeared in his hands. Ernest Lin had heard of the crown of the gods. It was formed from the faith of all the new gods and would be dedicated to their supreme king, which at the moment was this old man. The crown represented power and supreme status. But now, the old man actually took it off his head and wanted to give it to Ernest Lin. "Father, what are you doing?" Ernest Lin hurriedly waved her hand, expressing her refusal. "When I'm not around anymore in the future, you'll be the leader of the new gods." The old man said, "Father, what are you talking about? You have to know that our lives are endless. Even if you are not here, you will be somewhere else. No one can replace you." Ernest Lin lowered her head and said, was the old man going to give up his position? However, people are bound to get tired. The old man sighed. "I am now tired of this kind of life. I don't want to continue wasting my life here. Besides, if I can travel around, my body will grow faster. I'm not saying that you have to inherit my position. I'm just a little tired of the void recently, so I want you to keep an eye on them in my place for the time being." The old man said, "Well, there's no need for the crown of the gods." Ernest Lin pondered for a moment and said, she didn't know what the old man was planning to do now. "You might not know the true purpose of the crown of the gods, but the minute you wear it, you'll understand why I'm entrusting the crown of the gods to you." After the old man finished saying this, he directly came to the front of Ernest Lin. "Remember, if you want to wear the crown, you must bear its weight. While I'm away, are you willing to help me lead the new god faction?" The old man looked at Ernest Lin and asked seriously. "Yes." Ernest Lin nodded and said, no matter what, she should just cooperate with the old man for now. Although the old man's acting skills were bad, Ernest Lin didn't know what he wanted to do either. Here you go. The old man put the crown on Ernest Lin's head. Ernest Lin felt the pressure coming from the crown and frowned. Ernest Lin, don't blame me. It's just that I have some things that need to be done. If we want the new gods to stand straight in the void, we have to pay a price. As for the final result, you just have to enjoy it. The old man said and waved his hand. As the old man waved his hand, the crown changed into a halo shackle. At this moment, Ernest Lin was imprisoned. Don't worry. No matter what, I won't hurt you. The old man controlled the shackle and turned to bring Ernest Lin to a secret compartment behind the throne. He moved the secret compartment and a secret chamber appeared. Boom! Ernest Lin used all her strength and realized that she couldn't even deal the tiniest bit of damage. All right, Ernest Lin, don't waste your strength anymore. It's useless. With your strength, you can't break it from the inside out. The old man said. Father, you really disappoint me. Ernest Lin said, imprisoned by the halo shackles. Don't worry. When I become the strongest, I will definitely treat you well. The old man looked at Ernest Lin and said, Go. The old man's power erupted as he locked Ernest Lin in the secret chamber. Sigh. Ernest Lin, who had just entered the secret chamber, sighed. She didn't expect her father to be so wary of her. To think he had used the crown as a trap to restrain her. No matter how he treats others, he is still a father before me, Ernest Lin said to herself. To be honest, she was saying this to Lin Ming. She didn't want to cut off all her father's opportunities to extricate himself from the situation. Ching! The halo shackles on Ernest Lin's body were removed without being damaged at all. Otherwise, the old man would sense that something was wrong immediately. Ernest Lin, of course, didn't have such ability. But Lin Ming was by her side. Let's go, I'll bring you out. Lin Ming said to Ernest Lin. Okay. Ernest Lin nodded, and the two disappeared from the spot. On the throne, the old man stood up as he said, Sirs, according to the cultivation technique you taught me, my strength has indeed improved by leaps and bounds. However, the entire temple was empty. That's good. Don't let down our expectations. Although there was no one in the temple other than the old man, a voice appeared. Yes, when my strength grows enough to fight against the heavenly emperor, I will change the political situation of the void. The old man said. This time, there was no reply. To think the thunder god attacked his own sister. The thunder god's strength is not bad. If the old man frowned and said, No way. That's my son. The old man shook his head and said, Phew. The old man exhaled. Your father is quite sick. Lin Ming said to Ernest Lin in the dark. Ernest Lin just rolled her eyes at Lin Ming and didn't say anything. It's time to go out and take a look. The old man said and left the temple. Father. When a new god saw the old man, he quickly bowed. Come with me. The old man nodded and said, How's your cultivation recently? The old man looked at the new god and asked with a smile. I've encountered a bottleneck. It's difficult for me to take even a step forward in cultivation now. The new god sighed and said, I have a new cultivation technique here. Faith cultivation has too many disadvantages, to begin with. This cultivation technique I have here can eliminate the disadvantages of the faith cultivation technique. It can allow you to obtain faster and purer cultivation. The old man said, Really? The new god asked excitedly. Since when were there lies in my mouth? The old man frowned and said, I didn't mean that. Please don't misunderstand. The new god hurriedly waved his hand and said, I'll teach it to you now. Remember, don't tell anyone about it. After all, the selection of the new gods, leader, which is only conducted once every 10,000 years, is about to begin. I've been secretly observing you. You're tenacious, and you meet my requirements in every aspect. That's why I'm teaching you the new cultivation technique now. Understand? The old man looked at the new god and asked, Yes, yes, yes. I understand. Thank you, Father, for your kindness. Hearing the old man's words, the new god's heart was filled with excitement. He wasn't a dazzling existence among the new gods. To begin with, he hadn't expected that his father had been paying attention to him. Furthermore, to think his father had the intention of making him his successor. If such a thing were to happen to anyone, they would be unable to control their excitement. Furthermore, His father was now imparting him a new cultivation technique. Remember it well. With that, the father god imparted the cultivation technique to the new god. After the father god finished imparting the technique, he said to the new god, "Go along then." Yes. Just as the new god was leaving, he rapidly circulated the cultivation technique that the old fellow had taught him. The minute he did so, the new god felt refreshed. His body also became incomparably light, and his strength grew once again in such a short period. The father god has truly not deceived me. The new god spoke with extreme excitement. When I become the next leader of the new gods, I will definitely repay you. The new god couldn't help but cheer. Another fish has taken the bait. The old man opened his eyes. Then the old man found another new god. Lin Ming was familiar with this new god. It was the eight-winged angel. Because the angel was powerful and had many believers in the human world, the old man had his eyes on him this time. "How's your cultivation now?" The old man followed the same routine of giving pointers. However, the eight-winged angel was more careful due to the many disappearances of new gods recently. However, when the eight-winged angel tried the cultivation technique that the old man had given him, he was immediately deeply immersed in it. Such cultivation speed was simply irresistible. This time, it's a big fish too. The old man had a smile on his face. 5 more new gods like the eight-winged angel, and I'll have the power to fight against the heavenly emperor. The old man gritted his teeth and said excitedly, "Isn't father doing a good deed?" Ernest Lin frowned and asked with some confusion, "It's apparent that something's wrong with your father's cultivation technique. If he's really doing a good deed, would he have needed to send all of us out?" Lin Ming sneered. Those closely involved couldn't see it clearly, but as someone on the sidelines, Lin Ming could see the problem at a glance. Your father is probably asking them to cultivate some kind of secret technique. When they're least on guard, he'll then go and get what he wants. Lin Ming said, "Let's wait and see." Ernest Lin nodded. They weren't short on time anyway. At this moment, the new god that was cultivating the new technique suddenly frowned. "Wait a minute, there's something wrong with this cultivation technique." The new god stood up and staggered. He couldn't even stand properly. "There's something wrong with the father god." The new god spat out a mouthful of blood, and all the strength in his body seemed to have been drained. "How does the cultivation technique feel?" The old man's figure appeared as he asked. "You." The new god could feel his body becoming powerless, and his heart was filled with terror. No matter how foolish he was, it was impossible for him not to know the culprit behind all this. There was a huge problem with the father god's cultivation technique. However, due to the profundity of the cultivation technique, he had been unable to see through the problem in the beginning. By the time he could, it was already too late. Don't blame me. In the future, when the new god faction ascends to the peak, I won't forget you." The old man looked at the new god with a greedy gaze and said, "You can kill me, but you can't devour me. Please, I beg of you." Looking at the old man who had his bloody mouth wide open, the new god shouted. He begged for mercy crazily. Rather than being devoured, he would rather choose death. But now he had no choice at all. "Stop," Ernest Lin said coldly, and a force appeared. Ernest Lin. Looking at Ernest Lin who appeared, the old man frowned. "How did you escape?" The old man said in disbelief. "Even if I was trapped by the halo shackles, I wouldn't have been able to escape in such a short time." The old man exclaimed. Furthermore, he hadn't felt anything when the shackles were opened. This proved that Ernest Lin's methods were much better than his. "Why did you use the word escape, father?" "By cultivating like this, the power in your body will be extremely complicated. Aren't you afraid that you'll explode from all the different types of power and die in the end?" Ernest Lin looked at the old man and asked, "Humph, you don't have to care about this. If you leave now, I'll pretend that nothing happened and you're still my daughter." The old man snorted and said, "Since I've discovered it, I won't leave as if nothing had happened." Ernest Lin shook her head and said, "Ernest Lin, are you forcing me?" The old man frowned and unleashed his power. "I was wondering why the number of the new gods had been decreasing while father's power was increasing. So it turns out you've been devouring the new gods to increase your power." Ernest Lin's expression was cold as well. She had no intention of leaving. She would see the matter through, even if the person before her was her father. The thunder god and the father god were indeed father and son. One wanted to exterminate the entire clan for his sole chance, while the other wanted to directly devour the new gods. Of course, the old man's was crazier. To think he directly devoured the other new gods to obtain their power of faith. I really didn't think that you would be so cruel. Ernest Lin spoke. Since that's the case, don't blame me for being impolite. With this, the old fellow's power skyrocketed as a powerful force ruthlessly descended. To think the old fellow wanted to kill her right from the start. Thanks to Lin Ming's guidance, Ernest Lin's power had also skyrocketed. The two powerful forces collided, causing the temple in the distance to even collapse. What happened? All the new gods frowned as they headed to where the battle was happening. Ernest Lin, to think your power can grow so fast. The old fellow couldn't help but feel surprised when he saw that his power couldn't do anything to Ernest Lin. One had to know that as he continued to devour new gods, the rate at which his strength was growing could be described as terrifying. However, Ernest Lin, who was originally inferior to him, was actually able to match up to him now. He couldn't help but feel envy, jealousy, and hatred. Ernest Lin, if you had been willing to tell me just a bit about your cultivation technique earlier, I wouldn't have become like this. The old man was now blaming Ernest Lin. Buzz. The new god that had just collapsed vanished without a trace. Lin Ming had done this to help the old man solve his worries for the sake of Ernest Lin's future ruling of the new gods. Since that's the case, don't blame me. The old man roared angrily, and his strength soared once again. Several mixed powers appeared behind the old man. The power made Ernest Lin feel a strong sense of danger. Boom! The several powers of rules descended together. Ernest Lin knew that she couldn't resist this attack, but she didn't panic. After all, no matter what, wasn't Lin Ming by her side? With Lin Ming around, nothing unexpected would happen. Devour. A bottomless power devoured all the power that descended. How is this possible? To not have his actions exposed. The old fellow had wanted to end the battle quickly, so he had used his strongest attack. He didn't expect that Ernest Lin would be able to receive it so easily. How can you have such powerful strength? The old man looked at Ernest Lin in disbelief. Ernest Lin wore a relaxed expression. It was because Lin Ming had secretly made a move. At this moment, all the new gods had arrived and surrounded them. Father God, Ernest Lin. Everyone exclaimed in astonishment. One had to know. The Father God had always doted on his daughter. To think the two of them were fighting now. It didn't seem like an act either. This was because the power that the Father God was displaying caused their eyelids to twitch. Many of the new gods wouldn't be able to escape unscathed from such power. HMPH. Seeing that so many new gods had surrounded him, the old fellow immediately left. He didn't want his scandal to be exposed now. As he left, he glanced down and saw that the new god who had cultivated the cultivation technique he had provided had disappeared without a trace. After the old man left, the surrounding new gods came forward and circled Ernest Lin. Ernest Lin. What happened? Some of the new gods asked with great concern. Nothing much. Ernest Lin shook her head and said, a family scandal should not be exposed. Now that Ernest Lin had investigated it clearly, she would solve everything in the shortest time possible. Besides, with Lin Ming by her side, she had confidence. Ernest Lin replied to a few sentences and quickly left. At this time, the temple was once again restored. Father, do you have anything else to say? Ernest Lin stepped into the temple and asked. Ernest Lin, I am your father. I'm not only growing my power for myself. Besides, I didn't have any intentions to make a move on you no matter what. The old man looked at Ernest Lin and said coldly, can you not interfere in my affairs? The old man took a deep breath and said, no. Ernest Lin shook her head and said, this isn't your problem. It's just that your mind is already twisted because of the way you're improving yourself. Ernest Lin looked at the old man and said, when my strength reaches the strongest, I'll be able to control myself. The old fellow said angrily, can't you just take it that I'm begging you? The old fellow looked at Ernest Lin and asked, no. Ernest Lin shook her head firmly. If only you and I are left in the new god faction in the end. Do you think there's any point in that? Ernest Lin looked at the old fellow and asked, putting that aside, did you come up with this cultivation technique yourself? Or did someone teach you this disgusting cultivation method? Ernest Lin looked at the old man and asked, don't talk nonsense. after hearing Ernest Lynn's words. The old man became even angrier. I've heard that the reason why the New God faction can compete with the Heavenly Emperor and the others is not that our faction has many people and is powerful, right? Ernest Lynn continued. What do you mean by this? The old man frowned and asked coldly. I haven't met the 3 seniors yet. Ernest Lynn didn't back down at all and spoke again. It can't be that the 3 seniors had taught you this cultivation technique, right? Ernest Lynn's words caused the old man's expression to become increasingly unsightly. Oh, right. It can't be that they promised you that as long as you cultivated the cultivation technique that they provided you, you'll be able to have the same power and status as them, right? Ernest Lynn stared at the old man, and her gaze was filled with ridicule. You shut your mouth. At this moment, the old man finally couldn't control himself. You've been used, don't you understand? Why do you still cling to your ridiculous wishful thinking? Ernest Lynn also shouted. Boom! The aura of the 2 once again shattered the newly repaired temple into pieces. Enough! What's all the ruckus about? Suddenly, a voice appeared. The shattered temple returned to its original state. The surrounding new gods didn't even notice anything. Reversing time and space. Lin Ming frowned. The 3 strongest experts of the new god faction had appeared. Senior, you finally appeared. Ernest Lynn felt a majestic pressure and said without changing her expression. As expected of the strongest experts hidden in the new god faction, they were the reason why the Heavenly Emperor and the others didn't dare to make a move. Senior Hades. The old man quickly bowed. Hades? Lin Ming frowned. Why did this name sound so familiar? Oh, I remember now. Hades, the lord of the underworld. But weren't God and Hades supposed to be sworn enemies? Why was their relationship that of a senior and a junior now? On top of that, the power of Hades was much greater than that of the old man. From what he was sensing, Hades' power seemed to be almost the same as Lord Laozi, who was the most powerful among the Heavenly Emperor's faction. Did you teach this cultivation technique to my father? Ernest Lynn raised her head and asked. Your daughter is quite cute. Hades didn't answer Ernest Lynn's words. Instead, he turned to look at the old man. My daughter is still not mature enough. Please forgive her. Senior. The old man's arms trembled as he spoke. If you devour her, the advancement in your power will not be as simple as multiplying. You can even absorb your daughter's cultivation technique and power of faith. Hades looked at the old man and said, I already have a plan. I don't need to devour Ernest Lynn to control the final power. The old man said, Oh? Then I'll devour her. Hades looked at Ernest Lynn and said, Senior, you can't. The old man shouted. With that, Ernest Lynn felt an incomparable pressure coming towards her. Roar. Ernest Lynn directly entered hell. There were bones everywhere. The blazing temperature made Ernest Lynn suffocate. When Ernest Lynn heard the old man's desperate roars, her heart relaxed a little. At least, the old man's feelings for her weren't fake. Buzz. Suddenly, an arm appeared and pulled Ernest Lynn back into the temple. Devour? Devour my ass. Lin Ming appeared in front of Ernest Lynn and said coldly, Lin Ming, I've heard of you. Hades looked at Lin Ming and said, You're making him devour all the new god here, so you can swallow him in the end. Then you can filter the rest of the trash too. No wonder the 3 of you are so powerful, so that's how you got your power. Lin Ming looked at Hades and said, Roar. Hades roared, and a huge flaming heavenly hellbird came smashed down. Pangu axe, suppress. With Lin Ming's order, the Pangu axe appeared to block this huge force. You 2 enter my small world. Lin Ming glanced at Ernest Lynn and said, Hades, you only needed to control hell. Why are you here? Lin Ming snorted and said, If I can devour you, the benefits will be limitless. Hades looked at Lin Ming and said, Tisk tisk, you're dreaming. Lin Ming sneered, Chaos suppression. Lin Ming said, and the power of chaos descended. Countless black holes appeared around Hades' body, which made him unable to move and dodge at the first moment. Explode. With this, countless ghosts appeared before Hades, and all of them self-detonated. Hades also gained some time to catch his breath during the self-detonation. Break. Lin Ming injected his power of chaos into the Pangu axe, which caused it to change. The Pangu axe used to look just like a stone axe filled with cracks. Now, all the rocks on the axe had fallen off. The Pangu axe was filled with mysterious energy as it smashed down hard. This is a saint artifact. Fear appeared on Hades' calm face. How is this possible? Hades was no longer focused on the battle with Lin Ming. The sudden appearance of the saint artifact just made him want to escape as soon as possible. A saint artifact? Isn't it a half-saint artifact? Lin Ming frowned and asked in confusion. What Lin Ming didn't know was that due to the Pangu axe had just been baptized by his power of chaos, added with the power of restoration and other powers that chaos had, it had completely transformed from a half-saint artifact into a saint artifact. It should have been impossible for saint artifacts to appear in any of the worlds. Hades frowned and said, "Boom!" The Pangu axe smashed down, and Hades detonated a divine artifact to block the attack. He didn't have any intention of continuing the battle as he immediately turned around and prepared to leave. "You want to leave?" Lin Ming frowned. How could he allow them the freedom to just come and go as they pleased? "Lin Ming, I don't want to engage in a life and death fight with you." Hades looked at Lin Ming and said, "Life and death? Are you even worthy?" Lin Ming sneered. "Nothingness cut." Lin Ming snorted. Along with Lin Ming's attack, Hades could feel that he was being surrounded by the airtight attacks of the Pangu axe. "Lin Ming, you forced me to do this." Hades looked at Lin Ming and roared as his body expanded. An enormous figure appeared. Behind Hades was an endless abyss. Second world. The abyss behind Hades expanded rapidly and engulfed Lin Ming. Roar. Countless vengeful souls roared to devour Lin Ming in the endless darkness. "Welcome to my world." Hades' voice sounded. Lin Ming looked around. It seemed he had unknowingly entered Hades' world. This should be Hades' small world. Looking around, Lin Ming knew where he was. To think the small world can be used like this. Lin Ming had always treated his small world as his nurture target and simply couldn't bear to hurt it. But now, Hades had used his small world as a fighting method. Such methods had made Hades' fighting strength rise rapidly. This was because the small world was created by Hades, so everything in it was under his control, including the rules and laws. Even the finest speck of dust in the small world would be under Hades' complete control. Those who can reach Lord Laertes' tier really have their own methods. Lin Ming couldn't help but exclaim in adoration. One had to know that even the Heavenly Emperor couldn't create a small world that belonged to himself. Because of this reason, the Heavenly Emperor had even specially consulted Lin Ming. Surprisingly, Hades had a small world that the Heavenly Emperor couldn't even dream of having. Boom! Countless attacks came at Lin Ming. The rules and laws here all rejected Lin Ming. Lin Ming couldn't use any of the powers in Hades' small world, because even a speck of dust here was one with the small world and they all belonged to Hades. Using a small world as a combat method is really not bad. Although Lin Ming was stuck deep in the small world, he wasn't flustered. Lin Ming even observed Hades' small world from within. Buzz. Power appeared around Lin Ming's body, blocking all the attacks. Even though all the pressure of Hades' small world was on Lin Ming's body, he could still easily jump and look for the barrier of Hades' small world. This guy, how can he deal with the attacks of my small world so easily? Looking at Lin Ming, who was in his small world, Hades frowned. He knew that he had provoked a strong opponent this time, but he had nowhere to retreat either. When he had seen the Pangu axe, he had wanted to leave, but Lin Ming didn't have any intention of letting him go. Hades' small world is really good. Lin Ming nodded and said. The rules and laws here were almost perfect. However, because it was filled with vengeful souls, Hades himself would receive less energy feedback from his small world. Vengeful soul prison. As Hades spoke, countless vengeful souls trapped Lin Ming inside. Humph! Lin Ming snorted and the Pangu axe destroyed all the vengeful souls around him. However, how could the vengeful souls in Hades' small world be killed so easily? The vengeful souls that had just been annihilated appeared once again. Furthermore, as they got closer to Lin Ming, the power they possessed grew stronger. Hiss! As they were continuously annihilated, these vengeful souls actually slowly developed intelligence. In the end, all of them learned how to use magic. The scene of countless vengeful souls using magic to attack together was extremely spectacular. However, no matter how many attacks there were, they couldn't even be considered as tickles to Lin Ming. That being said, each time the vengeful souls were destroyed and resurrected, they would possess even greater power, which was also a problem. Of course, Lin Ming had a way to deal with them in one go. But he remained patient, because he wanted to see the highest tier a vengeful soul could possess. In the world where Lin Ming had lived, the god tier was the strongest tier. Then, what about the limits in the small world? This was something that Lin Ming had always wanted to figure out. Now that he was in Hades' small world, he wanted to see if he could get an answer. HMPH, you don't know the immensity of heaven. Go on, attack them. The more times you kill them, the more power they'll have. Watching Lin Ming, who had been attacking the vengeful souls in the small world, Hades said coldly. Lin Ming was unable to absorb any of the power in the small world, because this was Hades' power. Therefore, in Hades' opinion, he could exhaust Lin Ming to death. The highest tier is only at the beginner god tier. Lin Ming could feel that the strongest power these vengeful souls could have was at the beginner god tier. Now that he had figured out the highest cultivation tier possible in the small world, he simply said coldly, "Destroy." With that, the countless vengeful souls of the beginner god tier were all annihilated. This time, the vengeful souls that had been annihilated could no longer condense once more. How is this possible? Hades stared at Lin Ming and said in disbelief, "Well, the laws of the small world rely on the individual's building." Lin Ming said, "So the strongest power in the small world will depend on the tier of the creator." Lin Ming's understanding of the small world had increased. Before the small world completely becomes a world, there is a critical point between it and the outside world. I just need to get out at the critical point. Lin Ming jumped. Suppress. Seeing Lin Ming's figure suddenly leap, Hades used the power of his world to suppress him. At this moment, an incomparable pressure descended. This was the space controlled by Hades. This was the power of the entire small world. However, Lin Ming's figure only paused for a moment before he arrived at the critical point and punched down. Boom! The entire small world of Hades began to shake violently. The shaking shocked Hades greatly. Panguax! A beam of holy light appeared in Lin Ming's hand and he struck down again. Buzz! The axe directly hit a hole through Hades' small world. Pooh! Hades spat out a mouthful of blood. After creating the small world, he had become one with it. As such, now that the small world had been pierced through, he naturally suffered great damage. How is this possible? Hades looked at Lin Ming in fear and felt as if Lin Ming was the true master of the underworld. This was the power of his world, so how could it have been broken by Lin Ming directly? How much strength have you obtained? Hades looked at Lin Ming, his body trembling as he spoke. His power was among the strongest in all the worlds, including the void. Even if there was someone stronger than him, it would not very much. In short, it was impossible to beat him to the point he vomited blood so easily. Besides, the small world that he had used to trap Lin Ming had been punched right through by Lin Ming. On top of that, the saint artifact in Lin Ming's hands was something he had never seen before. Why don't you come to my world to take a look? Lin Ming looked at Hades and said, "The two of you, why aren't you making a move?" At this moment, Hades shouted. He knew that if the other two didn't make a move, and he was to really enter Lin Ming's small world, he wouldn't be able to turn things around anymore. Boom! As Hades spoke, two streams of power crashed down. Lin Ming's figure flashed, dodging all the attacks. "I see you guys are willing to appear at the same time today." Lin Ming smiled and said. Lin Ming had only heard of these three existences from the Heavenly Emperor, but he had never seen them before. Today, these three had finally appeared at the same time. However, one of them had already been severely injured by him. "Are you willing to join us?" A voice appeared. It was emotionless and gender neutral. "Are you guys even worthy of it?" Lin Ming merely snorted coldly and said, "You sure talk big. You think you're so great just because you defeated one of us." Another cold voice sounded. "I can agree to any conditions." The voice from earlier continued. "Any conditions?" When Lin Ming heard these words, his interest was immediately piqued. "That's right," the voice replied. At their tier, they could indeed fulfill any conditions. "I say, the three of you have always seemed neither human nor ghost. You don't even dare to reveal your face. Yet now, you're speaking so righteously," Lin Ming said. "The existence of the three in the void was just like a legend. You must be doing something not fit to be seen. I'm an open and above-board person. I can't hide in the darkness." Lin Ming snorted coldly and said, "There's no need for you to hide in the darkness. Since you won't say your conditions, I'll tell you what we can help you accomplish. The voice appeared and extended an olive branch to Lin Ming. Go ahead then. Lin Ming wondered what the three of them were secretly planning. Come with us. The voice lifted Hades and walked in front. Lin Ming didn't stop him from taking Hades away. After all, he was quite curious to see what they were talking about. Buzz. The master of the voice stretched out his finger and lightly swiped. With that, a dark vortex appeared in the void. This person took a step forward and disappeared on the spot. Lin Ming didn't hesitate at all and directly followed. The minute Lin Ming entered, he felt the majestic magic elements and spirit energy around. He had only taken one step, but the difference within and out of the vortex was so big. Many things can be said here. The master of the voice smiled and said, we want to break the restrictions of this world. We want to break the control of heaven's order. We want to truly belong to ourselves. The voice continued, full of surging spirit. The restrictions of this world? Lin Ming frowned. That's right. No matter how powerful we are still limited by the world. Just like how the highest cultivation tier of the life forms we have created can't surpass us. We don't want to live like this. We want to live our true selves. The voice said passionately. Such attitude and eloquence made Lin Ming feel that if they didn't do something related to propaganda, they would be burying their talents. Do you have a way to break through this world? Lin Ming looked at the guy and asked. Yes. The guy nodded. Now, we're just lacking in existence like you. The guy added. What method is it? Tell me about it. Lin Ming nodded and asked. If you agree to join us, we will tell you. Hades said weakly. He had just been severely injured by Lin Ming, so he naturally knew how powerful Lin Ming was. At this moment, he was the one who was most willing to pull Lin Ming into the group. You tell me first, then I'll consider. Lin Ming shook his head. He didn't agree just for the sake of getting the answer, because, at their tier, the laws would follow whatever they said casually. If he agreed now, negative effects would follow if he didn't do what he promised. All right, since we're both at the same tier, I'll say it. The cold voice sounded. As long as all the worlds explode at the same time, a crack will appear. At that time, we'll have a chance to break through this world and to break heaven's order. The gender-neutral voice made one's hair stand on end. What? Lin Ming frowned, thinking that he had heard wrongly. You and I have both reached such a tier. There is actually no need to hide it. After all, everything else is just ants. Everything that we see now is like a fleeting cloud that will disappear immediately. The person in the middle who was acting as the good guy spoke again. So, for personal gain, you want all the worlds to be destroyed? Lin Ming sneered and said, even if we don't do it, heaven's order will still choose to do it and rebuild all the worlds after a certain orbit is completed. At that time, we will only be the meat on the butcher's cutting board. The guy spoke again. Since we are going to be destroyed anyway, why not help us? The gender-neutral voice appeared again. That's right. I want to build underworld that belongs to me. Hades also spoke at this time. Just look at you. At that time, you will only be cannon fodder. Lin Ming glanced at Hades and immediately mocked. Fellow friend, will you join us in this matter? The guy in the middle asked. I will not stand on the same side as you. I can't learn this attitude of looking down on all living things. Lin Ming directly waved his hand and said, since we have already told you about the plan, it is not up to you to agree or not now. The gender-neutral voice said. So you're resorting to violence since persuasion won't work. Lin Ming sneered. Only the three of us know about our plan. Now that you know about our plan too, you want to leave just like that? The androgynous voice once again sounded in Lin Ming's ears. I don't want to hear about your stupid plan either. Lin Ming simply sneered and ignored the threat issued by the androgynous voice. Good, good. The person with the androgynous voice was extremely furious. Little brother, there's no need to make a move. Since Lin Ming isn't willing to join us, then forget it. The good guy in the middle spoke again. Big brother. The person with the androgynous voice was naturally extremely unwilling. All right, you don't have to say any more. I'll make the decision on this matter. The good guy in the middle waved his hand and said, Lin Ming, let's talk another day. The good guy looked at Lin Ming and said, very well. Lin Ming nodded and said, but I already know your plan. Are you sure you want to let me leave just like this? Lin Ming smiled and asked, what's the big deal? In the future, No matter what information you want to know, just come and ask us. We know everything. The good guy laughed and said, in that case, I won't bother you anymore. Goodbye, everyone. Lin Ming would never make a move against someone who smiled and was polite. As such, after nodding, he left. Big brother, why did you let him go? The person with the androgynous voice frowned and asked. For Lin Ming to be able to injure Hades so easily, his strength should be extremely terrifying. Even if we attack together, I'm afraid it will be difficult to control him. The guy in the middle seemed like a good guy, but in reality, he was the most vicious among the three. Naturally, the things he considered were also the most. If Lin Ming was an ordinary cultivator, he would naturally have made a move and just killed him here. However, Lin Ming's strength was too terrifying. At this moment, their plans were still in preparation, so he didn't want to provoke Lin Ming at all. If we want to kill Lin Ming, I'm afraid we'll have to pay a huge price. The guy in the middle frowned and said, but the androgynous person opened his mouth again, wanting to say something. Okay, you don't have to say anymore. Don't mention this matter anymore. You have to remember that we can't lose the greater for the less. The guy in the middle waved his hand and said, help little brother heal first. Now that his small world has been punched through by Lin Ming, I'm afraid it will take a long time to repair it. The power of the guy in the middle appeared as he helped heal Hades. What do you think about Lin Ming's strength? The guy in the middle looked at Hades and asked. Hades had just fought with Lin Ming, so he was the one who was most qualified to evaluate Lin Ming's strength. Extremely terrifying. Hades took a deep breath and said, just now, I had used my most powerful strength to trap him with my small world and attack him, but my small world had been directly destroyed by him. Also, he didn't use his full power. He did it effortlessly and I didn't have the ability to fight back. Hades said, effortlessly? The guy in the middle asked. That's right, it was literally effortless. I have a feeling. Hades nodded and said weakly. What feeling? The guy in the middle asked. I have a feeling that he's just toying with me. If he had wanted to seriously injure me, he could have done it in just one round. Hades smiled bitterly and said, what? The guy in the middle frowned and said in disbelief. Although your strength is the weakest among the three of us, but that's why Lin Ming is extremely terrifying. Although my strength is the weakest among the three of us, I'm also one of the strongest among others. Even if someone could defeat me, they wouldn't be able to do it so easily. Hades said, after all, at the strongest tier, even if one is stronger than me, the difference won't be too big. Hades sighed. He simply didn't understand why Lin Ming could have such powerful strength. Fortunately, we didn't force him to stay today. Otherwise, it wouldn't be as simple as just paying a price. The guy in the middle took a deep breath and said, all right, let's continue with our plan. There's no need to panic, but I'm afraid this Lin Ming is really a huge problem. The guy in the middle was regretting telling Lin Ming their plan because as long as Lin Ming didn't collude with them, there was a possibility of him stopping them. Moreover, recalling Lin Ming's attitude just now, the probability of him stopping them was very high. At this moment, Lin Ming had already arrived in his small world. Come out. Just as Lin Ming approached the old fellow, he stretched out his finger and said. As Lin Ming spoke, the old fellow's body began to split. What appeared were the innocent fellow, the eight-winged angel, and a few new gods. They were all split from the old fellow's body. Father God. The few people looked at the old fellow in horror and said, erase. Lin Ming raised his hand and erased all their memories of the matter of their father God devouring them. Don't think about taking such shortcuts in the future. There are no shortcuts on the road to success. Lin Ming patted the old man and said, if you devour them all, do you know the result? Lin Ming looked at the old man and asked, the power of faith of all the worlds in the new gods faction will belong to you, but our believers will become a big chess piece. Lin Ming sneered and said, I don't need to tell you the details. I can only say that the three of them are targeting the new gods faction, not the Heavenly Emperor's faction. That's because your greed has indeed surpassed that of the Heavenly Emperor and the others. Your selfishness is truly the best tool. At this moment, the old fellow who had just come back to his senses was also breaking out in cold sweat. He was even trembling on the spot. Only after coming back to his senses did he realize how terrifying his actions were. Lin Ming, thank you. Ernest Lin stepped forward and said, all right, there's no need to say any more. Lin Ming waved his hand and brought them out of the small world. This is the last time I'll help you out of respect for Ernest Lin. If you continue to be stubborn, I have no other way. Lin Ming said. Lin Ming never helped anyone clean up after them. He only helped the old man because he considered the old man as half on his side. Lin Ming, Ernest Lin didn't know how to thank Lin Ming. If it weren't for Lin Ming, the New God faction would have collapsed. I wonder what explanation did you tell those three existences? When the old man thought of the three existences, he asked with a trembling voice. Even Hades was equally as strong as the Heavenly Emperor. As for the androgynous guy and the good guy, they were even more powerful. The three of them were among the strongest. From the old man's perspective, although Lin Ming was powerful, he was only about the same as the Heavenly Emperor. To get him out of the loop while facing the three of them, Lin Ming had probably paid a certain price. Explanation? Tusk, what explanation shall I give them? Lin Ming snorted and said, I don't need to give them any explanation. Then why did they? The old man wanted to say something but stopped. You mean to ask, why did they let you and me go? Although the old man didn't finish, Lin Ming knew what the old man wanted to ask. Yes. The old man didn't hide anything either. He simply nodded. I severely injured Hades. Then I left after saying a few words to them. Lin Ming told the truth. Apart from not telling the details of their terrifying plan, he had revealed some details. The old man didn't quite believe that Lin Ming could beat Hades to the point he vomited blood. I don't need to explain too much to you. Lin Ming couldn't be bothered to say any more nonsense. Oh right, your son is exactly the same as you. Only you and your son can think of such a thing to kill off the whole clan for one person's advancement. Lin Ming sneered and handed the thunder god to the old man. This time, the new gods owe you a huge favor. The old man bowed deeply and said, Forget it. I don't need your favor. Lin Ming waved his hand. Lin Ming. At this moment, a voice suddenly appeared in the New God faction. It's the Heavenly Emperor. Ernest Lin said after hearing the voice. Senior Heavenly Emperor. No matter how powerful Lin Ming was now, he was still full of courtesy. Of course, whether he beat someone else up or not didn't have much to do with his manners. Lin Ming, something has happened and we need your help, the Heavenly Emperor said anxiously. What is it? Lin Ming frowned and asked, for the Heavenly Emperor to be so anxious. It was definitely a big deal. The ancient curse has appeared. The Heavenly Emperor took a deep breath and said with a trembling voice. The ancient curse? Lin Ming touched his nose. How could the ancient curse suddenly appear? Let's go to the Heavenly Court and we'll talk there. The Heavenly Emperor pulled Lin Ming and said, I still have something to do here. Lin Ming turned around and said, Everyone is in danger now. Don't worry. No one will do any harm to the new gods. The Heavenly Emperor spoke frankly. Fine, I'll go with you. Lin Ming was very interested in this so-called ancient curse. Furthermore, since the Heavenly Emperor was pulling on him like this, he might as well go. Whoosh! Lin Ming split out a clone. He'll be enough to help you solve a lot of things. After saying this, Lin Ming and the Heavenly Emperor disappeared on the spot. Phew! After seeing Lin Ming leave, the old man relaxed and directly sat down on the ground. This is simply a nightmare. The old man sighed and said. At this moment, Lin Ming followed the Heavenly Emperor and came to the Heavenly Court. Lord Laozi, Buddha, and the others were already waiting for Lin Ming. Lin Ming. When they saw Lin Ming arrive, Lord Laozi and the others all stood up. You're here. Lord Laozi walked forward and said. Buddha didn't go forward to welcome Lin Ming, because he had competed with him for the Dragon Bane. However, it was because he had been beaten by Lin Ming that he was more willing to let Lin Ming join them to investigate the reason for the existence of the ancient curse. Fellow friend Lin Ming, please take a seat. The Heavenly Emperor pointed at his seat and said, There was no hierarchy here. After all, everyone here was the strongest. The main reason why we are gathered here is because of the ancient curse. The Heavenly Emperor was the first to speak and preside over this matter. Can you explain what is the ancient curse first? Lin Ming said. Lin Ming didn't know much about ancient curses. Ancient curses are literally curses that have existed since ancient times. Heavenly Emperor nodded and said, As long as one is cursed by an ancient curse, purple hair will grow from the inside of one's body to the outside. In the end, one will be entangled by the hair and die. The purple hair can't be cut off nor burned. Lin Ming asked. That's right. No method can destroy the purple hair. We can't even stop it from continuing to grow. The Heavenly Emperor nodded and said, until we die. Zhu Jian added from the side. The ancient curse has not appeared for a long time. I don't know why it has suddenly appeared at this time. The Heavenly Emperor sighed. It could be seen that they were extremely wary of the ancient curse. Even with your strength, you can't resist it? Lin Ming asked. They were the strongest after all. If they couldn't resist it, the others probably wouldn't have the ability to do so. That's right. Previously, there was an extremely powerful existence in our faction who had been plagued by the ancient curse. In less than 10 years, he disappeared. The Heavenly Emperor nodded and said, if they could resist the ancient curse, they wouldn't have been so anxious. It's an ancient curse, so who made it into effect? Lin Ming touched his nose and asked. We only call it the ancient curse because we don't know who cast the curse, but it behaves just like a curse, which is there are no patterns or signs to it. The Heavenly Emperor sighed and said, can this thing spread? Lin Ming asked. Yes, as long as the cursed person's flesh and blood spreads. Others who come into contact with them will also be affected by the ancient curse and eventually perish. The Heavenly Emperor nodded and said, this is the true terror of the ancient curse. This is also the reason why it is called a curse. As long as a person who is plagued by the ancient curse has thoughts, everyone will suffer. At this moment, Buddha sighed and said, previously, there was another expert in their camp. If he was alive, he would probably have the same power as Lord Laotzi. That person was his brother. At that time, his brother didn't have any ability to resist at all. All of you had already existed back then? Lin Ming asked. Indeed. That's why we understand how terrifying this ancient curse is. The Heavenly Emperor nodded and said, this ancient curse made everyone feel imperiled. It could be said that no one dared to leave their residence. This thing simply doesn't seem to have a root. One may clearly have always stayed in one's residence and have never come into contact with the ancient curse. But one may still be infected by this ancient curse at any time. Once one is infected, one can only wait for death. The Heavenly Emperor sighed. How many people died back then? Lin Ming asked. At least half of all of us. Lord Laotzi said. His 2 junior brothers had died due to the ancient curse as well. Back then, if one were to compare pure combat power, Lord Laotzi's 2nd junior brother was probably even stronger than him. Half? Lin Ming frowned and asked. This number was too terrifying. An extremely long time had passed. So all of us thought that the ancient curse had disappeared. No one expected that the ancient curse would appear again. The Heavenly Emperor said with a gloomy face. Who has just been infected by the ancient curse? Lin Ming asked. Since it was discovered, it meant that someone had already been infected by the ancient curse. 4 to 5 void monsters have been infected. We have sealed them in space. Lord Laotzi said. The ancient curse will not appear all at once on everybody. People will be infected slowly. Zhu Jian told a fact that made everyone feel despair. Because it gave people the feeling that they could only wait for death. Which was a terrifying feeling. In other words, everyone among us has the possibility of being infected. Lin Ming nodded and understood what they meant. That's right. The Heavenly Emperor nodded. Will ordinary cultivators, below the nascent soul realm, be infected by the ancient curse as well? Lin Ming asked again. Yes. The Heavenly Emperor nodded. So half of the population in all worlds will perish? Lin Ming nodded, indicating that he understood how terrifying this ancient curse was. Since the ancient curse has this ability, what's the need of investigating? Lin Ming sneered and said. What do you mean? Lord Laotzi looked at Lin Ming and asked. It must be Heaven's Order's doing. Only Heaven's Order has such ability. All the worlds were under the control of Heaven's Order. Who else besides Heaven's Order possessed such power? Even the strongest people in the world couldn't resist the ancient curse. Moreover, anyone from the strongest to the most ordinary person had a possibility of being infected by the ancient curse. We've thought about it before, but that's not the case. Lord Laotzi shook his head and said. How do you know? Lin Ming sneered and asked. Because we can talk to Heaven's Order. Heaven's Order said that it wasn't him. He also said that if he wanted to do such a thing, there was no need for him to go through so much trouble. Lord Laotzi said. This is indeed the case. The Heavenly Emperor also nodded. indicating that he deeply believed in Heaven's Order's words. With the power of Heaven's Order, he could wipe out all worlds, including the void, with just a random thought. There was no need for him to go through so much trouble to do these things. So you believe in the words of Heaven's Order? Lin Ming sneered and said, Heaven's Order already possesses emotions and selfish motives. In fact, there are many things that you don't have to believe. He had interacted with Heaven's Order before. It was said that if Heaven had emotions, even Heaven would grow old. However, it was a fact that Heaven's Order now had emotions, and he had even specially raised a group of creatures to do things for him. The void monsters in the void were such existences. As long as it was something that Heaven's Order did not like, or if it was inconvenient for him to make a move, he would have the void monsters make a move. After all, the void monsters could even wipe out an entire world. Furthermore, half of the population will be dead. No one other than Heaven's Order can control the numbers so accurately, Lin Ming said, who had the ability to so strictly control the number of deaths. After all, among the deaths, there was this group of the strongest experts. Previously, we had also suspected that it was Heaven's Order's doing. However, Heaven's Order has an elimination plan added to his denial, so I removed the suspicions. At this moment, Lord Laotzi said, An elimination plan? When Lin Ming heard this name, he frowned again. Tell me about it. When Lin Ming heard this name, his instinct told him that it was nothing good. Even the name itself gave people a sense of despair. It is to rebuild the world, Zhu Jian said at this moment. In layman's terms, it's the destruction of all the worlds and the rebuilding of the world. Buddha also said from the side. I see. Lin Ming suddenly recalled what Hades and the other two had said. They were also planning on destroying all the worlds to obtain the opportunity of leaving the world. At that time, the good guy in the middle had also said that even if they did not do it, Heaven's Order would do it. Why would Heaven's Order do such a thing? Lin Ming asked. It's said that the world can't sustain so many living beings, so it has to be rebuilt. Buddha said. I think Heaven's Order may just be bored. Lin Ming snorted and said, Since it's an ancient curse and we need to investigate it, there's no hurry. I'll be right back. After Lin Ming finished speaking, his figure disappeared on the spot. Fellow friend Lin Ming, please hurry, the Heavenly Emperor said from behind. At this moment, Lin Ming had arrived at the New Gods faction. Hades, fellow friends, I'd like to meet all of you. Lin Ming's voice entered the ears of Hades and the other two. Why is he here again? Hades had just gotten a little better now. Upon hearing Lin Ming's voice, he couldn't help but tremble. It can't be that he wants to harm us after he found out about our plan, right? That androgynous guy also appeared. No matter what, let's meet him first. The guy in the middle frowned and said. He also didn't welcome Lin Ming's arrival. But because he was afraid of Lin Ming, he had no choice but to meet him. Fellow friend Lin Ming, do you have something you need for looking for us this time? The good guy in the middle cupped his fists at Lin Ming and asked. Of course. I believe you must know about the ancient curse. Lin Ming nodded and said. Yes, I do know. Why are you mentioning this matter, though? The guy in the middle nodded and asked. The ancient curse has appeared again. Lin Ming said. What? Hearing Lin Ming's words, the old fellow in the middle frowned. The ancient curse hasn't appeared for so long. How could it just appear again? Can the three of you be infected by the ancient curse as well? Lin Ming looked at the three of them and asked. Yes. The guy in the middle nodded his head frankly. Do you think you will be infected this time? Lin Ming sneered and asked. What do you mean? Lin Ming's somewhat repetitive words made the androgynous guy frown and ask. Come with me. Rather than live in fear of the ancient curse, we might as well go and find the reason. Lin Ming said. Where should we go find it? We won't participate in such things. After all, the curse is something that can make people perish. Hades shook his head. One should know that with their current strength, it could be said that it was very difficult for them to perish. It could even be said that the probability of them dying was infinitely close to zero. However, once they were infected by the ancient curse, they would surely die. Then you don't have to go. What about the two of you? Lin Ming couldn't be bothered to waste his breath on them, much less persuade them. Third brother, don't have so much to say. What fellow friend Lin Ming said is right. Rather than living in the shadows, it's better to get to the bottom of this. The guy in the middle said. Let's go. We'll go with you, the guy in the middle said and followed Lin Ming's footsteps. He knew very well how powerful Lin Ming was. He had a feeling that if they followed Lin Ming, they might really be able to find the answer. Okay. Lin Ming didn't say much. He brought the three of them to the heavenly court. Fellow friends. Seeing that Lin Ming had brought the three of them here, everyone in the heavenly court stood up. This was a form of respect for their strength. Of the three of them, apart from Hades, who was slightly weaker, the remaining two were at the same level as Lord Laotzi. Lin Ming, why did you invite these three here? Buddha asked from the side. Although he was sure of their strength, his faction didn't welcome them, since they may also be affected by the ancient curse. If we investigate together, we can rule out many possibilities. Lin Ming said, what you said makes sense. We will do as you say. Lord Laotzi said at this moment. Please take a seat. Lin Ming said. As he spoke, 3 thrones appeared in front of the three. Although I don't know what the three of you have been planning to the point you never show face, I believe that you should have some understanding of the ancient curse. Lord Laotzi spoke to the three of them. Lord Laotzi, the three of us are doing much. We just meditate every day. The good guy in the middle cupped his fists and said, but if you're asking about our understanding of the curse, we have indeed thought about it. The ancient curse is just a balancing plan. A balancing plan? The heavenly emperor frowned and asked. Yes. The balancing plan is, of course, so that the situation of exhausted resources and spirit energy won't happen in any of the worlds. The good guy in the middle nodded and said. Lin Ming also nodded. He had the same thought as well. In my opinion, the balancing plan might and might not be the work of heaven's order. The good guy in the middle added. It might not be the work of heaven's order, you say? Can you explain why you think so in detail? Hearing the words of the good guy in the middle, everyone stood up in excitement. It might be the work of one of us. The good guy in the middle pondered for a moment and said, you mean? Hearing this, everyone frowned. What I mean is simple. The good guy in the middle smiled. Hades. You. At this moment, Zhu Jiayan's surprised voice sounded. Following Zhu Jiayan's words, everyone's gaze shifted from the good guy in the middle to Hades. Little brother. The androgynous guy was the first to speak. Little brother. The good guy in the middle also exclaimed. That was because purple hair had appeared on Hades' body. Although the androgynous fellow and the good guy in the middle were extremely heartbroken seeing their little brother like this, they could not help but retreat, because once one come into contact with the curse, one would simply have no way out. Lin Ming. Back away. Everyone in the entire heavenly court immediately retreated far, because of the purple hair that had appeared on Hades. Only Lin Ming remained where he was and didn't move at all. At this moment, Hades looked at the purple hair on his body with despair on his face. He didn't know why he would be infected by the purple hair. Once one was infected by the purple hair, death was inevitable. He knew this because a long time ago, he had a younger brother. And now, there were only 3 of them. Because his younger brother had been infected by the purple hair and had since died, Hades closed his eyes. He had already accepted his fate. Lin Ming, what are you doing? Just when everyone was worried that they hadn't avoided Hades in time, Lin Ming suddenly moved forward and approached Hades instead. Lin Ming, don't come over. Once you're infected by this ancient curse, you will definitely die. Although Hades had been heavily injured by Lin Ming previously, he couldn't help but shout at this moment. Infected? Very well, let me be infected then. Lin Ming sneered and said, following Lin Ming's words. Hades' figure retreated explosively. Lin Ming, you have powerful strength. There's no doubt about that. However, it's precisely because of this that I don't want to destroy you. After saying that, Hades retreated again. At this moment, he actually became righteous. HMPH, your nature isn't bad. Lin Ming sneered and moved forward. It was a given that Hades couldn't beat Lin Ming in terms of speed. In just an instant, Lin Ming had arrived beside Hades. So, I will try my best to help you. Lin Ming smiled and said. As he spoke, he had already used his power to restrain Hades. Then, he started carefully observing the purple hair on Hades' body. This purple hair was no different from the hair of an ordinary person. No one would have thought that this was actually the incarnation of the ancient curse. It had the ability to destroy any powerful expert who had been infected by it. Lin Ming, You. To everyone's horror, they noticed that purple hair was starting to grow on Lin Ming. This was because once one came into contact with the purple hair, or even via sound transmission, one could still possibly be infected by the ancient curse. How terrifying was this? There was no need to even think about it. At this moment, Lin Ming felt his soul tighten. Lin Ming frowned. To think the spiritual body could also grow purple hair. This meant that the ancient curse could infect the root of one. Everyone, find a place to seclude yourselves. I will figure out this ancient curse before I look for you. Lin Ming said to everyone. After they heard Lin Ming's words, all of them disappeared on the spot. As for Hades, he only sighed. After all, he was already infected by the ancient curse. Whether he stayed with Lin Ming or not didn't matter anymore. Besides, the ancient curse on Lin Ming had been spread by him. Isn't Lin Ming a little too arrogant? Everyone frowned and said, to think he dared to provoke the ancient curse. He will definitely die. Zhu Jiayan said coldly. After all, he had been beaten by Lin Ming twice. When he thought of Lin Ming now, other than instinctive fear, he was also filled with hatred. There were so many prodigies and extremely powerful existences in the past. They did not believe that they would be overpowered and had insisted on trying to get to the bottom of it. The end was the same, the final outcome was death. Back then, some had wanted to solve the ancient curse by infecting themselves. However, no matter how powerful one was, as long as one was infected by the ancient curse, the end result would be the same. One would die. There was no exception. One less opponent. Lord Liaozi closed his eyes and said. At this moment, Lin Ming had his eyes closed as he began to feel the power of the ancient curse. He shockingly discovered that the child in his small world had also started to grow purple hair. Lin Ming's small world had turned purple as well. Lin Ming snorted coldly and removed the purple energy, making his small world turn back to its original color. However, it only took an instant for the place to turn purple again. This energy is indeed strange. Lin Ming frowned and said. Lin Ming could feel that the energy in his body was also being assimilated at this moment. To think the ancient curse could corrode his power. Wasn't the ancient curse being a little too overbearing? Get lost. Lin Ming roared. As he said this, the power was forced out by Lin Ming. Boom! The fire-type power of rules erupted around Lin Ming. At this moment, he wanted to use the fire-type power to burn all the purple hair. However, no matter how vigorously the fire-type power of rules burned, the purple hair wasn't even singed. The ancient curse is indeed powerful. Lin Ming nodded. It seemed that the ancient curse couldn't be dispelled using normal methods. Nothingness. Lin Ming spoke again, and his soul body turned into nothingness. In the current state, regardless of whether it was the power in his body that didn't belong to him or anything else, everything would fall off of him. However, unexpectedly, the power of the ancient curse also turned into nothingness along with Lin Ming's soul body. The ancient curse was simply beyond the dog skin plaster by miles. There was simply no way to get rid of it. Hades had stood at the side and had not left. As he watched Lin Ming's actions, he sighed and said, Don't struggle anymore. As long as you are contaminated by the ancient curse, there is no way to get rid of it. Hades sighed again before saying, I've already told you not to touch me. Although Hades had been beaten up by Lin Ming, as a person who respected strength, he respected Lin Ming even more. Originally, when Lin Ming had approached him, he had frantically tried to avoid him. But now that Lin Ming was already infected, Hades could only sigh helplessly. I'll be right back. After saying this, Lin Ming disappeared on the spot. At this moment, everyone in all the worlds fell into a state of panic. This was because the ancient curse had appeared in all the worlds. It had appeared with no omen, nor was there a way to solve it. Furthermore, there was no way to guard against it. Most importantly, even ordinary people would be infected by the ancient curse. At this moment, Lin Ming appeared in his small world. Master! The child in the small world stood in front of Lin Ming and was extremely weak. Lin Ming looked at the child apologetically. He did not expect that even the small world would be affected by the ancient curse. You don't feel any pain or anything like that, right? Lin Ming looked at the child and asked. No. The child shook his head and said, I will resolve this matter in the shortest time possible. Lin Ming nodded and said. When he left the small world, a portion of the power in his body was assimilated once again. HMPH. Lin Ming snorted. If all his power was to be assimilated by the power of the ancient curse, then everything would be completely over. Chaos, Lin Ming said coldly. As he said this, the purple power was forced out of his body. Chaos, Lin Ming said again. And this time, the purple hair fell from his body. Lin Ming, you! Looking at the purple hair falling off of Lin Ming, Hades was in disbelief. I had originally wanted to study the power of the ancient curse, but it is indeed overbearing, Lin Ming said after forcing the ancient curse out of his body. If he hadn't forced it out with haste, there was a real chance that his power would be assimilated by the purple power. The essence of the ancient curse's power is the power of laws. That's why you can't resist it, Lin Ming said to Hades. Lin Ming controlled the power of chaos. One had to know that the power of chaos was a power that could rival the power of laws. That was why Lin Ming could use the power of chaos to force the power of the ancient curse out of his body. However, this was unbelievable to Hades. After all, in such a long time, no one could solve the ancient curse at all. Come here. Lin Ming waved at Hades and said, I'll take it that you're not entirely bad and help you get rid of it. If Hades hadn't avoided him just now, Lin Ming wouldn't have cared about him at all. But since he wasn't entirely bad, Lin Ming decided to help him. Thank you, thank you. Hades even wanted to kowtow to Lin Ming at this point. After all, Hades was already prepared to accept his fate, to eventually die after being infected by the ancient curse. But now, Lin Ming had forced the ancient curse out of his body, giving him a chance to live again. To Hades, Lin Ming was his second parent. There's no need to say more. At first, I had thought that you wouldn't be so afraid of death. Lin Ming smiled and said. Judging from Hades' excited look, he was very afraid of death. Sir, please don't say that. If I were to die in battle or in some other meaningful way, I would be able to face it. But I just don't want to die under the ancient curse, without even knowing why and how. Hades sighed and said. In Hades' words, such a way of dying was too depressing. Moreover, in his opinion, it was also extremely terrifying. After all, if one died due to the ancient curse, it was simply impossible for one to enter the reincarnation cycle. One's body, essence, energy, and spirit would be sucked dry. All right, there's no need to say any more. I understand what you mean. Lin Ming waved his hand and interrupted Hades' words. It seemed that Hades had become long-winded after he had gained a second chance at life. What annoyed Lin Ming the most were people who talk too much. What are you standing here for? Why aren't you going back? Looking at Hades, who had been smiling at him, Lin Ming frowned and asked. Hades' current state was giving Lin Ming goosebumps. Hee, I would like to follow you. Hades bowed and said to Lin Ming. Get out of here. Lin Ming said in a bad mood. He didn't need any followers at all, even if Hades was as powerful as the Heavenly Emperor. Sir, I beg you. Hades begged as he looked at Lin Ming. What's the matter? Lin Ming frowned and asked. Sir, why don't you put me in your small world? I won't cause any trouble. Hades said. Forget it, just follow me. Lin Ming didn't say anything more. There must be something going on for Hades to be acting like this. Since he had already saved Hades, he might as well be a good person to the end. Many thanks, sir, many thanks. Hades took a deep breath and bowed to Lin Ming. All right, don't do this anymore. Lin Ming waved his hand and said. I need to go back. After all, the ancient curse doesn't affect just us. Lin Ming thought of his teacher and the demon god. I'll go with you. Hades nodded and said. Let's go. Lin Ming nodded and quickly went to the world he had previously been in. Before Lin Ming returned to his world, he brought Ernest Lin with him as well. Fortunately, Ernest Lin hadn't been infected by the ancient curse. As for the others, Lin Ming didn't care. Soon, Lin Ming arrived at his destination. At this moment, many in this world had been infected by the ancient curse. As soon as Lin Ming had arrived in this world, he had seen that countless lives had collapsed on the ground. Those who lost their lives included magical beasts and various kinds of lives. Let's go see Pangu first. Lin Ming brought Ernest Lin and Hades to Pangu's place. Lin Ming? Pangu was obviously surprised to see Lin Ming back. After all, as the guardian of this world, he could feel any movement in this world clearly. However, he hadn't sensed anything when Lin Ming had returned to this world. Moreover, if Lin Ming hadn't taken the initiative to come and find him, he wouldn't have even known that Lin Ming had returned. This made him even more aware of how terrifyingly powerful Lin Ming was. The ancient curse has now appeared in all the worlds, so I have come to see how our world is doing. Lin Ming directly stated his purpose of coming. The ancient curse exists for balance. We have no right to interfere with whoever is affected or not. Pan Gu looked at Lin Ming and said this. This surprised Lin Ming greatly. To think Pan Gu was so indifferent about this matter. What if you are affected by the ancient curse? Lin Ming looked at Pan Gu and asked. I will wait for death quietly without any struggle. Pan Gu said calmly. Lin Ming frowned. It reminded him that Pan Gu had once sealed this world to restore the spirit, energy, and vitality of the world. As expected, everyone had their own ideas. In fact, I support the act of balancing things out unconditionally. Pan Gu said again. Then do you know why the ancient curse exists? Lin Ming asked Pan Gu. I'm not interested to know. This is the will of heaven. Pan Gu shook his head and said. Okay, I know what you mean. Lin Ming nodded and disappeared with Ernest, Lin and Hades. Lin Ming, the sky. After Lin Ming left, Pan Gu stood there with a frown. Hades, who was behind him, should have been infected by the ancient curse. How could he be fine? Pan Gu said coldly. Lin Ming is really a variable. Pan Gu sighed. However, Pan Gu was now extremely fearful of Lin Ming. This made him start to think about how he should deal with Lin Ming in the future. At this moment, Lin Ming came to where Gandalf was. Teacher. After Lin Ming arrived, he looked around but didn't see Gandalf. What's going on? Lin Ming frowned. Lin Ming closed his eyes and his divine consciousness covered the whole world. Humph. Lin Ming snorted and took a step forward. Not bad at all. Lin Ming sneered and arrived in front of a small universe. A small universe was different from a small world. A small world was created by a cultivator, while a small universe was the birth of a world within a world. Lin Ming? Lin Ming had just arrived when a familiar figure blocked in front of him. Don't go over. A dark palm was placed on Lin Ming's shoulder. Lin Ming only frowned but didn't resist, because he also had deep feelings for the master of this palm. This person was the demon god. Why did you send my teacher into this small universe? Lin Ming asked calmly. Lin Ming, you might not understand the ancient curse, but as long as one is infected, death is inevitable. Moreover, from being infected with this ancient curse to dying, the time is short, the demon god said to Lin Ming. No one can resist it. The demon god sighed and explained to Lin Ming. Lin Ming naturally already knew all this. Of course, Lin Ming knew the reason before the demon god had explained to him. It seemed that the demon god was afraid that he didn't know how terrifying the ancient curse was. But the most important point was that his teacher, Gandalf, was inside. The demon god was worried that Lin Ming would enter a state of rage. After all, he knew Lin Ming placed too much weight on relationships and was too emotional. Senior demon god, I know all of this. But still, let my teacher out. Lin Ming looked at the demon god and said, Lin Ming, I've said all that just now, because I was worried that you would raise this question. Gandalf and the others had entered this small universe voluntarily. They also know the consequences of being infected by this ancient curse. Right now, they are protecting the remaining lives. Do you understand? The demon god sighed and said to Lin Ming. Although Gandalf was not a god tier expert from the same era as his and was currently only a beginner god tier, since he was indeed a god tier expert, the god tiers would all appreciate each other. He had also been extremely unwilling to lock Gandalf up in the small universe. However, now that Gandalf had been infected by the ancient curse, he had no choice but to do so. Furthermore, the demon god was also sacrificing himself. After all, others were simply unwilling to care about these things. They were also worried that they would be infected by the ancient curse. All right, I know how terrifying the ancient curse is. I can break it. Lin Ming smiled and said. He knew what the demon god was worried about and what he was thinking. You can break it? Upon hearing Lin Ming's words, the demon god frowned. Although he knew how monstrous Lin Ming was, he still didn't believe that Lin Ming could break the ancient curse. After all, in such a long time, no matter how strong or monstrous one was, as long as one was tainted by the ancient curse, there would only be one end. Moreover, no one could break it. He and I have both been infected before. Lin Ming pointed at Hades and said to the demon god, both he and you have been infected before? After hearing Lin Ming's words, the demon god frowned again. You just have to trust me. You should know that I don't lie. Lin Ming looked at the demon god and said, Okay, I understand. The demon god looked at the serious Lin Ming and nodded. If someone else had said so, he naturally wouldn't have believed in it. But since it was Lin Ming who had said so, then he must really have a way to break the ancient curse. Can you enter the small universe instead? After all, the demon god found it difficult to say these words. Of course. Lin Ming nodded and said, The ancient curse did not pose any threat to Lin Ming, but you still have to be careful. Seeing that Lin Ming was about to enter, the demon god spoke again. I understand. Lin Ming nodded. The two of you, wait for me outside. Lin Ming said to Ernest, Lin, and Hades. All right. Hades was the first to respond. Hades was no longer afraid of the ancient curse. After all, to him, Lin Ming could break the ancient curse anyway. What was there to be afraid of if the ancient curse could be broken? Lin Ming didn't say anything more and directly entered the small universe. He instantly arrived in front of Gandalf. Lin Ming. Seeing Lin Ming appearing in front of him, Gandalf instantly stood up in surprise. Then he quickly retreated. What are you doing here? Do you not want to live anymore? Hurry up and get out. Gandalf shouted. The flash of surprise on his face just now was instantly put away. Lin Ming knew the reason for his reaction. Gandalf was worried that he would be contaminated by this ancient curse. After all, in Gandalf's knowledge, as long as one was contaminated by the ancient curse, one would die without a doubt. Gandalf had no descendants, and he didn't have any other disciples besides Lin Ming. As such, he regarded Lin Ming as his own son. He didn't want Lin Ming to be hurt at all. I'm here to take you out. Lin Ming looked at Gandalf, who was now covered in purple hair, and said with some heartache, Take me out. Stop fooling around. If I wanted to go out, the demon god wouldn't have trapped me here. I'm a dying man now, and I don't want to drag anyone down with me. Gandalf waved his hand and said, You, on the other hand, haven't been affected by the ancient curse. So what are you doing here? Get out quickly. Gandalf seemed somewhat impatient. Chaos. Lin Ming knew that it was useless to say anything else, so he might as well take action. With that, his power of chaos landed on Gandalf's body and quickly merged into Gandalf's body. This? Gandalf could feel that the power of the ancient curse was slowly being forced out by the power of chaos. In just a short time, the purple hair on Gandalf's body was gone and he was restored to his original state. How is this possible? It's not because I'm at the end of my life that I'm having illusions, right? Gandalf couldn't believe it. He even thought that he was dreaming. Let's go. Lin Ming smiled and said to Gandalf. Boom. Gandalf's body exploded with power. He wanted to see if he was dreaming or not. Then his aura changed and suddenly became much stronger. Gandalf actually broke through from the beginner god tier to the intermediate god tier at this moment. Congratulations, teacher. Lin Ming smiled and said, Your power isn't it a little? Gandalf took a deep breath and said, He finally felt like he wasn't dreaming when he had unleashed his power just now, but the sudden rise in his realm had made him feel as if he had entered a dream again. This was because of Lin Ming's power of chaos. Back when Lin Ming had forced the ancient curse out of Hades' body, Hades' power hadn't changed. That was because Hades was already among the strongest. However, Gandalf was only a beginner god here. Now, the power of chaos had been injected into his body. Although he had only absorbed a tiny bit of the power that was comparable to the power of laws, it was enough to make him directly advance by a small realm. Although it was merely the advancement of a small realm, without Lin Ming's power of chaos, Gandalf would probably need at least 1,000 years of cultivation or even 10,000 years. Let's go. Looking at Gandalf, who was still standing there, Lin Ming said again. Gandalf really thought that he was living in a dream. Let's go. Gandalf was so excited that he laughed out loud as he stood beside Lin Ming. Lin Ming brought Gandalf to the front of the demon god. You. Seeing Lin Ming coming out, the demon god immediately laid his eyes on Gandalf. When he saw that the ancient curse on Gandalf had indeed disappeared, he subconsciously bit his tongue. However, as a peak god tier expert, although he was inferior to Lin Ming, it was still impossible for him to feel pain. Lin Ming. The demon god looked at Lin Ming and suddenly spoke. What's wrong? Lin Ming turned his head and asked. Half of the lives in our world have been infected by this ancient curse. You see, the demon god said to Lin Ming. Lin Ming knew what the demon god wanted to ask before he even started his question. Senior demon god, the ancient curse has existed for so long. Do you think I should make a move and save half of the lives? Lin Ming looked at the demon god and asked, What do you mean? The demon god frowned. He didn't understand what Lin Ming meant. I'll be right back. Lin Ming didn't say anything else. He just disappeared on the spot. He hadn't taken Gandalf with him. Gandalf and the demon god looked at each other, at a loss for words for a moment. Senior Pangu. The reappearance of Lin Ming's voice made Pangu, who had finally calmed down with much difficulty, frown. He quickly stood up and put on an extremely kind face. Lin Ming, you're back. Have you seen your teacher? Pangu greeted Lin Ming and asked. Yes, I have, and I've broken the ancient curse on him. Lin Ming nodded and said, You've broken it? Pangu's divine consciousness swept through the entire world. After all, he was the guardian of this world. If he wanted to know anything about the world, he could. It has really been broken. How is this possible? Pangu couldn't help but feel doubt in his heart. However, he also believed that his senses would not be wrong. That being said, this should have been something impossible. Lin Ming, how did you break the ancient curse? Pangu came to his senses and asked Lin Ming. It's a secret. Lin Ming smiled and said. Lin Ming could sense that something was wrong with Pangu, so it was simply impossible for Lin Ming to tell him everything at this moment. When he had broken the ancient curse just now, he had used his power to block the outside world, so it was impossible for Pangu to know what method he had used just now. A secret that you can't even tell me? Pangu smiled to relax the atmosphere. It's a secret, so I can tell no one. Lin Ming also smiled and said. Pangu sighed. He knew that since Lin Ming had said so, it was impossible for him to tell him what method he had used. By the way, Senior Demon God had asked me something that I would like to discuss with you. Lin Ming looked at Pangu and said, Demon God? What did that little brat say? Pangu frowned when he heard the Demon God's name. It couldn't be that this guy, Senior Demon God, wants me to break the ancient curse on all the lives of this world. What do you think about this? Lin Ming asked Pangu. Lin Ming, I advise you not to break the balance in this matter. Besides, karma in this matter is not as simple as just being the karma of this world. Do you still remember that back then, you had already found it extremely difficult to handle just the karma of the god-tier experts of this world? Not to mention that this is the power of karma in all the worlds. Upon hearing Lin Ming's words, Pangu did not even think before he spoke. If you break a few of them, of course it doesn't matter, because it won't affect the balance. But if you break all the ancient curses of a world by force, you must think twice before you do so. Pangu continued. The power of karma of all the worlds? Hearing this, Lin Ming frowned. The only thing that could threaten Lin Ming now was the power of karma. After all, Lin Ming had the power of chaos to contend against the power of laws. As for heaven's order, for some reason, he still wouldn't make a move against Lin Ming. But the power of karma was different. It was just right there. Even if one touched it, it wouldn't matter. But if one reversed the karma and messed it up, one would then have to bear all the consequences. Moreover, Lin Ming had been subjected to the power of karma before. It was just as Pangu had said. Back then, Lin Ming had been unable to disintegrate even the karma created by just the god-tier experts of this world. Now, just thinking about the power of karma of all the worlds, one could already imagine how terrifying that would be. And now, what Lin Ming cared about the most was not just the power of karma. Otherwise, Lin Ming would not have come to Pangu. I want to know, Senior Pangu, is there a relationship between you and the power of karma? Lin Ming looked at Pangu and asked seriously, what could I have to do with the ancient curse? After hearing Lin Ming's words, Pangu was obviously stunned for a moment before he said, the ancient curse has existed since the birth of all the worlds. I wasn't even born at that time. If you insist on saying that it has anything to do with me, it's just that I might be infected by it. Pangu waved his hand and said, I'm just asking. After all, the significance of the ancient curse's existence simply coincides with the ideal you insist on. Senior Pangu. Lin Ming looked at Pangu, who had such a huge reaction, and said with a smile, it's just a matter of opinion. In fact, deep down, I do agree with the existence of the ancient curse. I'll say it again. If I'm contaminated, I won't struggle at all. I'm willing to just wait for death. After hearing Lin Ming's words, Pangu said, "Okay, I understand what you mean, Senior Pangu." Lin Ming took a deep breath, nodded, and said, "Then I will take my leave." Lin Ming cupped his fists and said, "Where are you going?" Pangu asked, "To help everyone in this world and relieve their pain." Lin Ming smiled and said, "What?" Pangu frowned. He had thought that Lin Ming would not interfere in this matter. Now, it seemed that not only was Lin Ming going to interfere, but he would probably even remove the ancient curse on all the lives in this world that had been infected. "Lin Ming, do you not want to live anymore? This is the power of karma of all the worlds. No matter how strong you are, you can't resist it. Even heaven's order doesn't dare to do such a thing." Pandu shouted at the first moment. He. It's heaven's order's problem that it can't withstand it. What does it have to do with me?" After saying that, Lin Ming disappeared on the spot. "This?" Pangu took a deep breath and disappeared on the spot too. "I'm afraid that I have to do something this time." Pangu's voice echoed in the darkness. "I advise you not to make a move." Another voice responded in the darkness. "Why?" Pangu's voice was laced with unwillingness. "Lin Ming's power is too strong. He can even break the ancient curse. You should not, that's the power of laws." The voice sighed and also spoke with unwillingness. "But will he ruin our plan by doing this?" In the darkness, Pangu frowned and asked, "I don't think so. If it's just one world, it won't have much of an impact. After all, there are too many worlds, and the world we live in is too small. If we were to talk about impact, it's close to nothing." The master of the voice shook his head and said, "But Lin Ming is too crazy and he's standing on the side of righteousness. It's too unbearable." Pangu sighed and said, "At least now, the effect of Lin Ming's actions on us is still close to nothing. So for now, we need to calm down and not let Lin Ming discover any clues. Otherwise, he will keep pestering us." The voice appeared again to remind Pangu. "Lin Ming was the one who had made it impossible for us to obtain the dragon vein last time. This time, it's Lin Ming again. If I had known earlier, I would have killed him when he was just born in my world." Pangu said fiercely, "There's no need to be so extreme. We don't know whether Lin Ming is useful or not. If he is useful, he will definitely be of good help." The voice comforted him again. "Lin Ming will probably ruin the plan of Hades and the other two. We can't let Lin Ming know about our plan." Pangu also reminded the voice. "You don't need to remind me." The master of the voice nodded. At this time, Lin Ming didn't know about the conversation in the darkness. However, even if he knew, he would only smile. To Lin Ming, he need not take such a matter to heart. After all, there were many who wanted to deal with him, including Hades and the other two. Even the Heavenly Emperor probably didn't want to let him exist now. Lin Ming hid in the air, and his voice entered everyone's ears. "Everyone, get ready. There's no need to resist." Following this, a wave of power of chaos entered the infected people's bodies. Those infected by the ancient curse found that the power of the ancient curse in their bodies had been instantly forced out by Lin Ming's power of chaos. Everyone was surprised to discover that the ancient curse that was recorded to be unbreakable no matter the method had completely disappeared from their bodies. Moreover, all of them felt like they had been cleansed. Some cultivators had even broken through in an instant. Of course, Lin Ming would not treat everyone the way he had treated Gandalf, but the power of chaos itself brought too many benefits. After doing all of this, Lin Ming slowly opened his eyes. The power of the ancient curse in this world had all disappeared. Although only half of the lives in this world had been infected by the ancient curse, other than a few god-tier experts, all of them knelt on the ground. Lin Ming was their god. Last time, Lin Ming had merged the two worlds into one, saving the innocent people in the underground world. Now, Lin Ming had made a move again, directly breaking the ancient curse that they had been infected with. Even if they didn't trust anyone, they would still wholly believe in Lin Ming in their hearts. With that, Lin Ming felt the power of faith appear around his body again. This time, Lin Ming didn't refuse, nor did he pass it to Ernest Lin. He chose to accept the power of faith this time. The purity of your power of faith is really enviable. Looking at the power of faith around Lin Ming, Ernest Lin's eyes couldn't help but reveal her envy. The power of faith that Lin Ming had now was naturally inferior to hers. It could even be said that the power of faith around Lin Ming was less than 1% of Ernest Lin's, because there were too many worlds and her clones now existed in all the worlds. As such, she was absorbing the power of faith in all the worlds. Therefore, it was a given she had a lot of it. How is it enviable? Lin Ming smiled and asked. Your current power of faith is so pure that one strand of it is equal to more than 10 strands of mine. If my power of faith was as pure as yours, I'm afraid my power will be more than 10 times stronger than now. Ernest Lin said, the power of faith produced by my believers, or in other words, the power of faith produced by everyone's believers, is far inferior to the power of faith produced by your believers. Ernest Lin said, that's why you have to be sincere. Only when you truly put in the effort will there be a real return. If you only think about your own strength, it will only backfire. Even if you do obtain the power of faith, there's a possibility of losing it. And there's also a possibility that it's not pure. Lin Ming looked at Ernest Lin and said, yes, I'll remember it. Ernest Lin nodded and said, she knew that Lin Ming was teaching her. Although what Lin Ming said sounded like nonsense, it was something that really needed to be paid attention to. After all, with Ernest Lin's current power of faith and the clones she could give birth to, she would increasingly ignore many basic problems. Actually, I should go back to Earth to take a look. Lin Ming said, go back to Earth? To help Earth break the ancient curse? Ernest Lin asked. No, Earth won't be affected by the ancient curse. Lin Ming shook his head and said, what? This ancient curse will affect half of all lives in all worlds. Is Earth an exception? Hades frowned and asked. I don't say anything without evidence. Lin Ming nodded and said, then what are we going back to Earth for? Ernest Lin asked. To look at the dragon vein, of course. Lin Ming answered. Look at the dragon vein? Haven't you already put it back into the Earth vein? I don't think anyone will disobey your order, right? Ernest Lin asked. This was the truth. Nobody wanted to provoke Lin Ming now because he was just too strong. Besides, as long as they provoked Lin Ming, they would definitely pay a price. This wasn't as simple as getting beaten up. Let's just go and take a look. Lin Ming simply shook his head and disappeared from the spot, taking Ernest Lin and Hades with him. He's finally gone. A voice appeared in the darkness. If we allow him to just leave now, he might become even more troublesome. Another voice appeared. There were actually several people at the strongest tier in this world. Isn't he returning to the void this time? Another voice said. Not necessarily. Everyone, even those among the strongest, didn't dare to eavesdrop on Lin Ming's words and actions. Hence, they were currently clueless about his movements. Where else can he go? The master of the other voice frowned and asked. He might go to Earth. As if he had suddenly thought of something, the master of the voice abruptly stood up. Earth. Following this, another 2 voices appeared as well. There were actually 3 experts in the strongest tier in Lin Ming's world. One had to know that a world could not even withstand the birth of an expert in the strongest tier because the energy required for it was too large, and the magic elements in the world were simply not enough to support the birth of even one. For a god-tier expert to appear and reach the peak in a world, the expert would have to obtain some additional energy from other worlds or one's own world. The Void did indeed have quite a number of experts in the strongest tier, but that was only because they were born by heaven and earth, and thus had power near the peak of the god tier from the very beginning. On top of that, the Void would grant them even more power, which was why so many experts in the strongest tier could have been born there. It was just impossible for ordinary worlds to have so many experts in the strongest tier, and even one was extremely rare. However, no one knew where the 3 experts in the strongest tier who were in this world came from or whether they even belonged to this world. At this moment, Lin Ming had already arrived in the sky above Earth. There's no problem with the dragon vein, Ernest Lin said. Although Ernest Lin's strength was inferior to Lin Ming and Hades, thanks to Lin Ming's guidance, she was just half a step from joining the lineup of the experts with the strongest tier. As such, with such a short distance between her and the dragon vein, her senses couldn't possibly be wrong. There's indeed nothing wrong with it. Hades nodded as well. The 2 of them didn't know why Lin Ming placed so much importance on the dragon vein. Lin Ming didn't say anything and went straight into the earth vein. Dragon vein, Lin Ming said coldly. I'm here. The dragon vein's voice sounded, although it was indeed still there. Lin Ming could hear that its voice had become a little weak. Why have you become weak? Lin Ming frowned and asked. Weak? No, on the contrary. I feel like I'm getting stronger and stronger. After the dragon vein heard Lin Ming's words, it shook its head and said, Forget it, there is no need to ask you about this. Their methods are not something you can see through. Lin Ming waved his hand and stopped communicating with the dragon vein. After all, although the dragon vein was very popular and many of the strongest had come to snatch it, the consciousness that had been born from the dragon vein itself was not very sensitive. Now, even if those among the strongest were to use some method on it, it might not even be able to feel it. Come here. Lin Ming waved his hand and said, What's wrong? The dragon vein asked. Lin Ming was too lazy to explain, so he just stretched out his hand and put it on the top of the dragon vein's head. As expected, your fate has been drawn. Lin Ming sighed and said, What? My fate has been drawn? Why don't I feel it at all? On the contrary, I feel that my fate is growing. After the dragon vein heard Lin Ming's words, it frowned and said. Lin Ming looked at the dragon vein that was in front of him, and felt that it was just a big idiot. I told you, you won't be able to feel what they did to you. After all, they're all smart people. Lin Ming sneered and said, But I don't even know who made a move against me. The dragon vein said innocently, Sir, is there really someone who dares to disregard your order? Hades asked from the side. He wasn't trying to be sarcastic to Lin Ming. After all, he had fought with Lin Ming before. Back then, his strongest technique, which was to use his small world to fight with Lin Ming, had been directly penetrated by Lin Ming in an extremely short time. On top of that, Lin Ming had the power to break the ancient curse. Hades simply couldn't think of anyone who would have the confidence to provoke Lin Ming. My orders are nothing. Before real interests, no one can control themselves. Of course, they wouldn't dare to make a move in the open. But in the dark, there are many people who think they're smart. Lin Ming sneered. Then can you see who made a move against me? The dragon vein asked Lin Ming. Of course. Lin Ming nodded. With this, a power enveloped the dragon vein. Following that, the dragon vein felt an unknown power in its body disappear instantly, which was then followed by a wave of weakness. So what Lin Ming said was true. It had always been a victim, yet it didn't even know it. At this moment, in the darkness, something's bad. A voice abruptly sounded. What's wrong? The other two voices also quickly appeared. Lin Ming really went to earth and found the clues on the dragon vein. The master of the voice said with some anger, We only used part of the power on the dragon vein, and our methods were extremely hidden. Even the dragon vein, being the one who had its fate extracted, wouldn't have noticed anything. Quickly erase the power and Lin Ming shouldn't notice anything. Right? Another voice said as if comforting themselves. Impossible. Lin Ming has already erased the power. He will definitely follow the clues and find us. The master of the voice sighed and said, Humph, then let him come. I've had enough of this guy. The master of the other voice snorted and said angrily, That's what you say, but Lin Ming's power is. The master of the voice sighed again. Intercept. Looking at the power that was about to dissipate, Lin Ming snorted and directly intercepted this power in his hand. When? With that, Lin Ming directly grasped the power in his hand. Power of karma. Lin Ming said coldly. And the power disappeared in Lin Ming's hand. Following this, it appeared on the three. With that, the three felt their bodies become weak. Oh no, this is the power of karma. One of the voices said anxiously. At their tier, they weren't afraid of normal power at all. But the most troublesome thing to them was the power of karma. The power of karma was something one simply couldn't deal with using ordinary methods. For example, if one was attacked by Lin Ming, one could use one's power to counterattack or defend. However, it was different for the power of karma. One simply couldn't defend against the power of karma. It would just make one enter karma. One couldn't attack karma either. After all, to attack karma was to attack oneself. Therefore, the power of karma was a headache for anyone. How can Lin Ming control the power of karma? The expert who was among the strongest couldn't help but exclaim as he was entangled by the power of karma. He had mastered the power of karma after merging the two worlds. I just didn't expect that he could actually use and control the power of karma. On top of that, to think he could use just the tiniest traces to unleash the power of karma. Isn't he too powerful and undefeatable? Another voice appeared. The fact that Lin Ming could find them through the remnant trace of power and use the power of karma on them through it made them realize how terrifying Lin Ming was. I'm afraid Lin Ming will find us soon. Let's think of a way to deal with him. Another voice appeared and reminded the other two. There's nothing to worry about regarding the dragon vein. We're just worried that Lin Ming will follow the clues on the dragon vein and find us ultimately. This was what the three of them needed to worry about now. They had only extracted a little bit of the dragon vein's fate, so they could try to explain their way out. However, they had other shocking schemes. With Lin Ming's methods, he would probably follow the clues and find the final answer. Hurry up and cut off all the clues. The voice said. Now the power of karma has only found you. You must resist it and don't let Lin Ming learn any more information. As one of the strongest, if you keep your mouth shut, Lin Ming won't be able to do anything to you for a while. The master of the voice said to the person who was being entangled by the power of karma. I know. Don't worry, I won't leak any information. The person entangled by the power of karma nodded. We'll cut off the other clues. The remaining two looked at each other and disappeared on the spot. Why don't we take action together and punish Lin Ming? A voice appeared. If it was really that easy, we wouldn't have had to be so secretive and careful. The master of the other voice sighed and said, All right, let's hurry up and solve the matter at hand. The two of them began to erase all the clues. At this moment, Lin Ming, who was at the earth vein, couldn't help but click his tongue. Tusk tusk, the world I'm in is really interesting. Why do you say that? After hearing Lin Ming's words, Ernest Lin asked in confusion. It can't be that someone from your world made a move against the dragon vein, right? Hades frowned and asked. But no one in your world except for Pangu has this ability. With the relationship between Pangu and Earth, he couldn't possibly have made a move against the dragon vein, right? Hades continued in confusion. One had to know that Pangu had protected the dragon vein with all his might. That's right. The reason I had been able to survive and not be completely split up was because of great god Pangu. If it wasn't for him, I would have become someone else's cultivation nourishment by now. The dragon vein also nodded and spoke. It had great trust in Pangu. The power of karma just now had indeed not entangled Senior Pangu. Lin Ming nodded and said, But then again, this can't eliminate Pangu's suspicion. After all, the term sustainable development had indeed been said by Senior Pangu. Pangu protecting the dragon vein might also be to occupy and use it. It may be just that Pangu's methods seemed smarter. However, before Lin Ming understood the truth, he would not place Pangu within his suspicion ranks. Do you know who stole my fate? After the dragon vein heard Lin Ming's words, it asked. Yes, Lin Ming nodded. You just said that great god Pangu might have ulterior motives against me. Then, I want to ask you, since you have been treating me as such, do you have ulterior motives too? At this moment, the dragon vein looked at Lin Ming and suddenly asked, Me? Of course I don't have any. Besides, you can't help me in any way. Upon hearing the dragon vein's words, Lin Ming chuckled and said, The dragon vein's fate was naturally very attractive to others. After all, even the strongest person in the Heavenly Emperor's faction, Lord Laotzi, had fought for it, but to Lin Ming, it was not attractive at all. You don't have any ulterior motives, so why are you treating me as such? The dragon vein asked in confusion. It knew that Pangu's intentions were probably impure, but it was a fact that he had protected it, because Earth is my home planet. I want Earth to be good. Do you understand? Lin Ming looked at the dragon vein and said seriously, You had been a creature in this world previously. Hearing Lin Ming's words, the dragon vein said in surprise. Of course, Lin Ming nodded. So, hurry up and restore Earth to its previous state. The current Earth is extremely fragile. Yes, I understand. The dragon vein hurriedly nodded. Since there's something going on, I'll go and settle it. Lin Ming waved his hand and prepared to leave. Right. Lin Ming suddenly remembered something. Buzz. Lin Ming raised his hand and a wave of power of chaos appeared directly on the surface of the dragon vein. With this, I'll be the first to know if anyone makes a move against you in the future. Whether the move was made openly or in the dark, Lin Ming said to the dragon vein, Thank you. You are my true benefactor. The dragon vein nodded its huge head repeatedly and said, All right, I'm leaving. Lin Ming didn't say anything else and directly left Earth with Ernest Lin and Hades. Lin Ming did this because he had something to settle. To think that there was really someone who dared to make a move against the dragon vein. No wonder he kept feeling that something had gone wrong with the dragon vein. Fortunately, he had believed in his premonitions and made a trip to Earth. Otherwise, the dragon vein that he had placed his hopes on would have been used by someone else. Get the hell out here. Lin Ming, who had returned to his original world, said coldly. Lin Ming, what's with you? Suddenly, a voice appeared. Lin Ming turned his head and frowned. Why are you in our world? Lin Ming said coldly. The person who had just spoken was the Buddha. I need to travel around for my cultivation to break through. So that's why I'm here in this world to travel. Buddha smiled and said, I wonder what has offended you. Why are you in such a bad mood? Buddha asked Lin Ming with a kind face. Tisk tisk. Why are you pretending to be a good person before me? Lin Ming sneered and said, What do you mean by pretending to be a good person? I don't know how I offended you, but please forgive me. Buddha still out on the character of a good guy as he looked at Lin Ming innocently and said, Do you want me to use the power of karma? Are you trying me? Lin Ming snorted coldly and lost his patience. There's no need for that, fellow friend Lin Ming. I'll admit that I did use some tricks, but at that time, I had also fought hard for the dragon vein. Upon hearing Lin Ming's words, Buddha's expression abruptly changed and he said, One had to know that the power of karma was currently in his body. It was just that Lin Ming was still controlling it and hadn't unleashed the power yet. Once the power of karma was unleashed in Buddha's body, he would probably lose at least 10,000 years worth of cultivation. Back then, I hadn't been able to defeat you, so I was forced to leave. It's just that now, I've only used a little trick to steal a little bit of fate. It was just a little bit. So fellow friend Lin Ming, please forgive me. After all, you know that just this bit won't affect the dragon vein too much. Buddha looked at Lin Ming and said, I won't tolerate even a bit. Lin Ming snorted coldly and said, Yes, yes, yes. I've indeed made a mistake on this point. That being said, fellow friend Lin Ming, please remove the power of karma in my body. Buddha smiled and said, This is naturally simple. Lin Ming nodded and said, Thank you, fellow friend Lin Ming. Seeing Lin Ming's attitude, Buddha immediately heaved a sigh of relief. He didn't expect Lin Ming to be so easily fooled. If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have been so nervous. Give me back the fate you stole, and I'll remove the power of karma for you. How about it? This is very fair. Lin Ming spread his hands and said, This. After hearing Lin Ming's words, Buddha frowned again. They had already used the fate. Now that Lin Ming was asking him to hand over the portion of fate that he had stolen, he simply couldn't take anything out at all. You're unwilling? Lin Ming looked at Buddha coldly and said. At this moment, Buddha didn't know how to answer Lin Ming. Sure enough, Lin Ming wasn't so easily fooled. Fellow friend Lin Ming, my cultivation requires fate. It was the most crucial step. So when I obtained the fate, I had directly used it for my cultivation. Buddha said embarrassedly. Then just let the power of karma stay in your body. Lin Ming nodded and didn't say anything else. Fellow friend Lin Ming, this. Hearing Lin Ming's words, Buddha frowned. If the power of karma was to be left in his body, this meant that there would always be a ticking bomb in his body. Who knows when it might be detonated by Lin Ming? If Lin Ming activated the bomb during the critical moment of his cultivation, or when he was experiencing heaven's tribulation in the void, he would probably suffer many damages even if he didn't die. I won't say I'm very fair when doing things, but at the very least, I've offered to exchange for an equal price. The power of karma had only appeared in your body because you had stolen fate. So now, as long as you hand over the fate that you had stolen, I will remove the power of karma and not pursue the matter. Even this isn't enough? Lin Ming looked at Buddha, frowned, and asked, But I've really used all of it for cultivation. Buddha sighed and said, Whether it had really been used for cultivation or not, it was gone now. Then there's no other way. By the way, why did you come here to look for Senior Pangu? Lin Ming waved his hand and said, Pangu? I just conveniently paid a visit to Pangu while on my travels. After all, Pangu could cultivate to such a level although being a mere mortal, so I naturally want to ask for advice. Buddha said, Fellow friend Lin Ming, I really can't hand over the fate now, but I can use other things in exchange. What do you think of this? Buddha avoided the topic as much as he could. Besides, the ticking time bomb in his body was giving him a headache. I'm not interested in any of the things you have. That being said, I'm quite interested in the green lotus you're sitting on. Lin Ming looked at Buddha, sneered, and said, "Fellow friend Lin Ming, isn't this a bit too much?" After hearing Lin Ming's words, Buddha frowned. He hadn't expected Lin Ming to want the green lotus he was sitting on, putting everything else aside. The green lotus was his symbol as Buddha. Even if he disregarded the benefits the green lotus brought him, if he really handed it over to Lin Ming, his dignity would be completely gone. Then there's no need for any further negotiations. Lin Ming wouldn't just easily dispel the power of karma for Buddha. He was saying he wanted the green lotus only to make things difficult for Buddha. At this moment, Buddha was already furious, but he had no choice but to endure it. This was because he had fought with Lin Ming before. Back then, when Lin Ming had fought against him and the Heavenly Emperor alone, he had suppressed both of them in combat. On top of that, they had used most of their strength and methods back then, yet Lin Ming had still been very relaxed. It was a breeze for him to deal with them. Now, he was the only one around. If he couldn't control himself and fought with Lin Ming, he would only be beaten up. Therefore, if Buddha wanted Lin Ming to remove the power of karma for him, he could currently only resort to softer methods. Don't say any more. It's either the green lotus or the fate. There's no room for negotiation. Lin Ming looked at Buddha, who came forward again and said with a cold snort, "I." At this moment, Buddha had a bitter look on his face. Why did he have to bear all the responsibility for what the three of them had done together? Besides, Lin Ming was not easy to deal with. Yet he had to deal with him alone. Right now, Pan Gu and the other expert at the strongest here were running as far as they could. By the way, why aren't you staying in the void and researching on how to break the ancient curse? What are you traveling for? Lin Ming suddenly asked Buddha. The key reason for my travels is to find a way to break the ancient curse. Buddha smiled bitterly and said. The reason why Buddha was smiling bitterly was that he could no longer use soft words to persuade Lin Ming to undo the power of karma for him. Otherwise, with Lin Ming's way of firing a sudden shot from the left and another from the right, everything that he had done as well as all their schemes would be learned by Lin Ming in a short while. What's the use of traveling here? Lin Ming asked with some doubt. I want to see the situation of all the worlds. Buddha put his palms together and said, Then I thank you on behalf of everyone in this world. Lin Ming smiled and said, Oh right, have you finished traveling in this world? Yes. To think that no one in this world has been infected by the ancient curse. Buddha nodded. At this moment, he suddenly remembered something important. Lin Ming had removed the ancient curse in this world. Buddha felt like he was shooting himself in the foot for saying that he was here in this world for his travels. Lin Ming, how did you do it? Buddha had originally wanted to stay away from Lin Ming because he was afraid that Lin Ming would fish the information out of him. But he couldn't help but ask. Shouldn't you know? Why are you still pretending? Lin Ming had originally turned his head away. But as he said this, he suddenly turned back and looked at Buddha with a mocking smile. You. Looking at Lin Ming's actions, Buddha was flustered. Lin Ming really knew everything. How is it that your power of chaos can remove the ancient curse? Buddha knew that his actions could not be hidden from Lin Ming. So he directly asked another question. Do you think that only you guys know how to take advantage of the power of laws? Lin Ming sneered and asked, What? What did you say? Hearing this, Buddha was stunned for a moment before he said somewhat guiltily, Don't you know what I'm saying? Though, I'm even more curious about one thing. If you're here, won't the Heavenly Emperor suspect you? And Lord Laotzi, he's always been able to predict things. Why wouldn't he suspect you either? Lin Ming looked at Buddha and spoke. This matter has nothing to do with me, to begin with. Even if they can predict things and observe the details, it won't implicate me. At this moment, Buddha had also recovered from his fluster. He knew that at a time like this, he simply couldn't reveal any clues. Otherwise, their plan might really be known by Lin Ming. Break the ancient curse. Lin Ming didn't say anything else and frankly said this to Buddha. The ancient curse has nothing to do with me. Moreover, once one is infected by the ancient curse, no one other than you can break it. Fellow friend Lin Ming, aren't you overestimating me by asking me to remove the ancient curse now? Buddha looked at Lin Ming and finally completely stabilized his mentality. I don't have anything else to say. I just want to say that you must be careful to not be used by others. Others are not idiots. It can't be that they can't notice even the slightest trace of what you guys have been doing for so long, right? Lin Ming sneered. The only reason no one has exposed your actions up until now is that your actions still have value. Lin Ming looked at Buddha and said seriously, "After all, how many fools are there among the strongest?" Lin Ming continued, "What do you mean?" At this moment, because of Lin Ming's words, Buddha felt as if his mental defenses had been broken through. That's right. All the experts at the strongest tier were investigating. Yet no one could reach a result in the end. It had been like this for so long, and in the end, even Lin Ming was dragged in. There were already signs. In this world and on Earth, there's no ancient curse. I'm not interested in anything else either. I'm just giving you a reminder. Also, I'm merely giving a certain senior some respect." After saying this, Lin Ming disappeared on the spot. The three experts in the strongest tier who were in this world could all hear Lin Ming's words clearly, especially the two who were hiding. They were both shocked. Their concealment had become a joke because of Lin Ming's 3 sentences. It turned out that Lin Ming had long discovered them. It was just as he had said in his second sentence. He was merely giving a certain senior some respect. Who? No matter what. He didn't intervene in this matter in the end. One of the experts in the strongest tier heaved a sigh of relief and said, Lin Ming should have known about their plan. But fortunately, he didn't intervene or interrupt them. But now, I have a feeling that I don't want to continue. At this moment, Buddha suddenly said, "Why?" Upon hearing the Buddha's words, the expert frowned and asked, "I believe you have heard clearly what Lin Ming had said just now. We have put so much effort into what we did. But maybe we're just being used by others. In fact, our every move may be under the control of others." Buddha sighed and said, "Great God Pangu, what do you think?" Buddha looked at Pangu and asked, "This?" Pangu pondered for a moment. Pangu knew that when Lin Ming had said just now that he was merely giving a certain senior some respect, he had meant him. Although Lin Ming has only cultivated for a very short time, I have a feeling that Lin Ming knows a lot of things that we don't know. Buddha lowered his head and said, "Just like how Lin Ming can break the ancient curse. Although we initiated it, we can't break it. We can only barely avoid being infected." Buddha sighed and spoke again. "And no matter how hard we worked, only half of us ended up being infected. This shows too many problems." At this moment, Buddha seemed to have suddenly understood something as he began to speak non-stop. "Do you think that we..." "Enough, stop talking." At this moment, Pangu suddenly interrupted Buddha. "What's wrong?" the other expert in the strongest tier asked. He still wanted to continue listening to Buddha's words. "Without this matter, none of us would have become experts in the strongest tier. You were able to obtain the blessing of heaven's order and reach your current tier because of this matter, right? And you. Everyone knows that Nuwa became one of the strongest due to fate. But who knew that you are the same?" Pangu looked at the two of them and said, "Besides, there are many things that cannot be stopped once started. The two of you understand that, right?" Pangu said coldly. But Buddha wanted to continue speaking, but he knew that there was nothing wrong with what Pangu had said. A large part of their power had indeed come from this. On top of that, the ancient curse could not be stopped once it started. Putting that aside, the three of us must be careful. We can't let anything go wrong with the ancient curse. I don't know why, but I keep feeling uneasy. The third expert at the strongest tier said, "Don't think too much. Just remember our final plan." Pangu said in the middle, "All right, let's not get together anymore." After saying that, Pangu disappeared on the spot. There was nothing of value in this place to Buddha either. As such, because of Lin Ming's reminder, he returned to the void. At this moment, Lin Ming also appeared in the void. "Lin Ming, please save my father." Just as Lin Ming landed, the thunder god appeared in front of him. "Your father? What's going on?" Lin Ming frowned and asked. "My father has been infected by the ancient curse. Please help him." The thunder god lowered his head and said, "Tisk tisk, how did you know that I could break the ancient curse?" Lin Ming looked at the thunder god with interest and said coldly, "Besides, a person like you who can kill his sister's reincarnation doesn't seem like someone that's so filial." Lin Ming followed up with a sarcastic remark that rang in the thunder god's ears. "If there's something wrong with father, he will also have a problem. He doesn't care about Father God. He only cares about himself. Ernest Lin said from the side. What about the answer to the first question? Lin Ming turned his head and looked at the Thunder God. The Void Walker told me. The Thunder God was silent for a moment before he said truthfully. He knew that in front of Lin Ming, any lies were useless. As such, he might as well be straightforward and tell the truth. It's my second brother, Hades said from the side. Senior Hades. The attention of the Thunder God had been on Lin Ming, so the minute Hades spoke, he was dumbfounded. To think Hades was with Lin Ming. On top of that, Hades' respectful attitude toward Lin Ming was like that of a servant toward his master. Hades was also among the strongest. As such, the scene caused the weak mind of the Thunder God to suffer another blow. Tisk tisk. So the three of you aren't exactly harmonious either? Lin Ming clicked his tongue and said. Hades only chuckled and didn't say anything else. Lin Ming, putting everything aside, I would still like you to help my father get rid of the ancient curse. After all, no matter what, in all the worlds, including the void, only you can remove the curse. Ernest Lin said from the side. It's a given I won't just let him be. Lin Ming nodded. With Lin Ming's status and power, it was difficult for him to have any emotions toward anything or anyone. Ernest Lin was an exception. Therefore, just for this exception, Lin Ming would help Ernest Lin's father remove the ancient curse. Lin Ming took a step forward and arrived in front of the old man. Tisk tisk, evil has its retribution. Lin Ming looked at the old man and said, if you come too close to me again, you will be the one who gets the retribution. Seeing Lin Ming's appearance and hearing Lin Ming's words, the old man chose to retort, if I stay away from you, you will really be taken away by the retribution. Lin Ming sneered. Father, Lin Ming is here to help you remove the ancient curse. Ernest Lin said from the side. He's here to help me remove the ancient curse? Upon hearing Ernest Lin's words, the old man looked at Lin Ming with a face full of disbelief. Power of chaos. Lin Ming couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with this old man. He just raised his hand and a wave of the power of chaos entered the old man's body. Following this, the purple hair that covered the old fellow transformed back. At the same time, the originally weak old fellow was revived. You can actually. How is this possible? The old fellow had existed for an extremely long time, so it was a given he knew that no one could break this ancient curse. But now, Lin Ming had broken the ancient curse in an instant. Look at you, the leader of the new god faction. Yet when others used the ancient curse to infect you, they didn't give you any face at all. Lin Ming clicked his tongue and said, what do you mean? Are you saying that the ancient curse didn't appear out of thin air, and instead someone is behind it? The old fellow was extremely astute. Upon hearing Lin Ming's words, he directly grasped the main point. Lin Ming had said that the person who had instigated the whole matter hadn't given him any face. Otherwise, did you think that everything appeared out of thin air? Lin Ming sneered. This sentence caused the old fellow's back to break out in cold sweat. If Lin Ming hadn't appeared and helped him remove the ancient curse, he would probably die without knowing why. He would have thought that he had been infected by something uncurable. Who did this? It can't be heaven's order, right? At this moment, the only one that the old fellow could think of was heaven's order. The ancient curse on you has just been removed. Just hurry up and recover. Don't think too much about anything else. Lin Ming didn't say anything more to the old fellow. Thank you, young friend. After hearing Lin Ming's words, the old man didn't say anything more. He just cupped his fists. He knew that Lin Ming was doing this to protect him, because he simply didn't have the qualifications to know who was behind this matter at all. If he learned more information now, even if he didn't die due to the ancient curse, there would probably be other accidents. After almost dying once, the old fellow was exceptionally obedient now. Fellow friend Lin Ming. Suddenly, a voice appeared in the new god's faction. What's wrong? Lin Ming turned around only to be greeted by the sight of Buddha. At this moment, Buddha was covered with purple hair. How did you get infected by the ancient curse? Lin Ming frowned and asked. I don't know how it happened either. It should have been impossible. Buddha said with a face full of fear. Why should it be impossible? The ancient curse doesn't discriminate, the old man said from the side. Let's talk in my small world. Lin Ming said to Buddha. Buddha nodded and directly entered Lin Ming's small world because he knew that although he had something to do with the ancient curse, now that he was tainted by the ancient curse, without Lin Ming, he could only wait for death. Buddha himself did not have the ability to remove the ancient curse. Although he was one of the strongest, his power still could not compete with the power of laws. Lin Ming, please save me. Buddha pleaded with Lin Ming. Didn't great god Pan Gu say that even if he was infected, he would choose to accept death? Lin Ming smiled and said, "That's Pan Gu, not me." Buddha shook his head and said, "Some people were willing to die, while others were extremely afraid of death. Besides, Pan Gu had said this because he knew that he wouldn't be infected by the ancient curse." Buddha had nothing to hide now. After all, he knew that Lin Ming knew a lot of things. He was a man on the verge of death. If Lin Ming did not take action, he would be a dead man. Therefore, it would be a joke to hide anything now. Besides, for him to have been infected by the ancient curse, he felt that he was trapped in a conspiracy. As such, he instead wanted to say more to Lin Ming even if Lin Ming didn't ask him anymore. "Well, Senior Pan Gu has such abilities. Perhaps your ally also has the ability to remove the ancient curse." Lin Ming nodded and said, "What?" Hearing Lin Ming's words, Buddha could not sit still. Did Pan Gu also have such an ability? He and Pan Gu had been allies for so long, yet he was clueless about such a thing. However, when Lin Ming said this, Buddha seemed to acquiesce in his words and believed in him, because he knew there was nothing in it for Lin Ming to lie to him. "Lin Ming, you don't seem surprised that I have been infected by the ancient curse?" Buddha looked at Lin Ming and asked. In his opinion, Lin Ming should be surprised that he had been infected by the ancient curse. After all, he was one of the originators of the ancient curse. On top of that, he had the means to prevent himself from being affected. But now, not only did Lin Ming not find it strange, he was even extremely calm and did not even ask anything. "What's so strange about this? You must have raised your doubts after you listened to my words and had doubts in your heart. Perhaps you've decided to back out, right?" Lin Ming looked at Buddha and said, How did you know?" At this moment, even the light of Buddha around Buddha had turned purple. Although his strength had weakened, it didn't affect his agitation and the fear in his heart at all. "I don't even need to think about it. The fact that you have been infected by the ancient curse proves that you have lost your value." Lin Ming sneered and said, "Lost my value?" Upon hearing Lin Ming's words, Buddha broke out in cold sweat. "Did you really think that your power is the number one in all the worlds, including the void?" Lin Ming looked at Buddha and asked seriously, "Although you are one of the strongest, there are many things that are not so simple that the strongest can have absolute control over them." Lin Ming continued, "For example, you can't affect Pan Gu, but he can easily affect you." Lin Ming smiled and continued, What exactly are you?" Buddha was currently panicking hard. This was the first time since he became one of the strongest that he felt fear. True fear. Currently, Buddha's fingers were trembling crazily. As one of the strongest and one of the originators of the ancient curse, he had existed for a very long time. Yet now he was just a chess piece. And a chess piece that was dispensable at that. How could he not be afraid? Even at this moment, he had a feeling that life was meaningless. "Hey, what are you thinking about?" Lin Ming patted Buddha's shoulder and interrupted his wild thoughts. "Lin Ming, you don't have to help me break the ancient curse." Buddha lowered his head, sighed, and said, "Why's that? Have you gotten over it?" Lin Ming smiled and said, "It's not that I've gotten over it. It's that I can't get over it. Right now. Even if I live on, it's just living on in degradation. There's no meaning to it." Buddha sighed and said, "Right, your strength isn't yours, right? Your true strength should only be at the advanced god tier, right?" Lin Ming sized up Buddha and said, How did you know?" At this moment, Buddha was once again agitated. "It's obvious that you had used fate to nurture yourself to become one of the strongest. On top of that, you had done this when you were at the advanced god tier. Did I say anything wrong?" Lin Ming said calmly, "No, nothing's wrong." Buddha sat down and nodded. There was nothing he could hide from Lin Ming since Lin Ming could see through him with a single glance. "But how did you see through it?" This, Buddha asked again. As one of the strongest, Buddha would give a sermon once every 1,000 years. But now, in front of Lin Ming, he was like a child who had just started cultivating. Although he had reached the strongest tier relying on the nurture of fate, he was indeed one of the strongest. I've always said that if it's not one's own power, then the power simply won't be one's power. No matter what method it is, how brilliant the method is, or how perfect your fusion is. If it's not yours, then it will never be yours. Lin Ming looked at Buddha and said, right now, you are being used only because of the fate in your body. You don't have the ability to resist, because you didn't rely on your own cultivation to become one of the strongest. Do you understand? Lin Ming looked at Buddha and said seriously, but this power is currently in my body. For a moment, Buddha was at a loss for words. Abandon it. Lin Ming interrupted him. Being one of the strongest for so many years. If Buddha abandoned the power of fate now, he could only become an advanced god tier. By then, he would really become an ant. He would have no ability to resist the experts at the strongest tier at all. Even a finger of those among the strongest could destroy him. Therefore, he still couldn't accept Lin Ming's words. Fellow friend Buddha, to be honest, I don't usually talk so much. It's just that I feel sorry for you, which is why I'm willing to say so much nonsense to you. This power of yours is your decision, and it has nothing to do with me. Lin Ming waved his hand, indicating that he didn't want to listen to Buddha's words anymore. However, since you're so pitiful, I can help you remove the ancient curse. With that, the power of chaos appeared. Fellow friend Lin Ming, there's really no need for that. I can't find the meaning of life now. Rather, I'm even a little afraid of living now. Buddha said. Buddha, who had been afraid of death just a moment ago and had rushed to find Lin Ming to save him, actually had no will to live now. This was enough to prove how big of a blow the conversation just now had dealt with Buddha. You can live for yourself, Lin Ming said frankly. I will only say this one last time. If you insist on seeking death, I will not persuade you again. Lin Ming was very good at killing his opponents, but he really had no interest in persuading someone. Very well, please save me, fellow friend Lin Ming. Buddha closed his eyes, and a tear streaked across his face, containing his feelings of helplessness and fear for the future. Go. Lin Ming raised his hand, and a surge of power of chaos entered Buddha's body. The ancient curse on Buddha's body was instantly forced out. The purple light of Buddha around Buddha turned golden again. Fellow friend, please force out the fate in my body as well. At this moment, Buddha bowed deeply to Lin Ming. Force it out for you? You've decided to give it up yourself, so deal with it yourself. Lin Ming raised his hand and prepared to ask Buddha to leave. I really can't separate the power from my body. Only you, my heaven-defying fellow friend, can help me. Buddha lowered his head and said, I pitied you, which is why I helped you to remove the ancient curse just now. Yet now you're clinging to me? Lin Ming frowned, having not the slightest intention to help. He wasn't a philanthropist. I'm willing to become your slave and follow you through life and death. If I betray you, I will not be able to enter reincarnation. With that, Buddha signed a one-sided slave contract. You didn't have so far. Lin Ming was also quite shocked. After all, as one of the strongest, Buddha had his own pride. But to think he signed a one-sided slave contract now. With this, from now on, whatever Lin Ming ordered, he had to obey. In the end, I can't live for myself, but I don't want to live in fear either. So please accept me. Buddha lowered his head and said. At this moment, Buddha had lost all of his pride as one of the strongest. Very well. Lin Ming sighed and raised his palm, asking once more before he made his move. Have you thought it through? As long as Lin Ming's palm fell, Buddha would fall from the ranks of the strongest. He could not even be compared to the demon god and the others. He will only have the strength of an ordinary god tier. Yes, I've thought it through. I will definitely not go back on my words. Buddha nodded and said, all right. Lin Ming did not say anything else as his palm landed. Break. Lin Ming said coldly. Following this, a wave of energy entered Buddha's body, and the fate within Buddha's body began to tremble crazily. Lin Ming's actions caused cold snorts of doubt to appear in several places at the same time. What's going on? Whose fate is trembling? A sound filled with puzzlement sounded in the void. It's not Nuwa. It's Buddha. Another furious voice sounded. How dare the cowardly Buddha do something like this? One of the voices questioned Buddha's actions. It must be Lin Ming. The other voice was also laced with anger. If Buddha's fate is cut off, one of our chess pieces will disappear. As one of the strongest, Buddha was quite an important chess piece. He has already been infected by Pangu's ancient curse and can't live long anymore. The other voice replied, "Let's give up on this chess piece then. A few auras disappeared between heaven and earth. It doesn't matter if we give up on this chess piece or not. If Lin Ming doesn't die, I won't be able to sleep soundly." Another voice appeared again. "Shut up. Don't mention anything about Lin Ming." An angry voice appeared. With that, calm returned to the void. At this moment, in Lin Ming's small world, Buddha was in extreme pain because of his fate being severed. He screamed, "Ah!" After all, the fate had been in his body for countless years. It had long since fused perfectly with his body. The feeling of it being removed was just like an ordinary person's limbs being severed. It was naturally extremely painful. "Break!" Lin Ming spoke coldly once again. Following Lin Ming's words, all the power in the small world began to circulate crazily. "Ah!" Buddha roared in pain once again. As time passed, the fate within Buddha's body was finally completely cut off by Lin Ming. Lin Ming waved his hand casually, and the fate landed in his hand. "I'll keep this fate and observe it for a while." "This is unnatural fate," Lin Ming said. "What do you mean by unnatural fate?" Hearing Lin Ming's words, even Buddha, who was in extreme pain, couldn't help but ask. "It means this was created and not born from heaven and earth. That's why the dragon vein can mobilize the ancient curse. But you can't do the same with the fate in your body. It's all because the fate in your body was created by someone else, and is not compatible with the power of laws." Lin Ming sneered and said, "As for the dragon vein, it was born from heaven and earth, and carries the fate of heaven and earth, making it natural." Lin Ming added, "Do you understand?" Lin Ming asked, "This? Thank you, Master, for helping me remove the unnatural fate in my body." Buddha endured the pain and once again bowed to Lin Ming. Whoosh! Lin Ming raised his hand and the power of the rule of healing landed on Buddha's body. With that, Buddha's body instantly recovered. Boom! Buddha, who was struggling to stand up, felt his body become extremely weak. This was because his strength had plummeted, which caused him to even be unable to support his own weight. The light of Buddha behind him had also become extremely dim. "You don't have to follow me. In the future, live for yourself. Remember, only things that you obtain by relying on yourself will you truly be your own. All shortcuts will only become your weaknesses in the future. Do you understand?" Lin Ming said to Buddha, "Master, please allow me to follow you for the time being. If I leave your side now, I'm afraid I won't even know how I died, let alone live for myself." Buddha lowered his head. There was actually some grievance in his voice. "Weren't you unafraid of death just now?" After hearing this, Lin Ming couldn't help but laugh. "Well, isn't this all because I want to live for myself?" Buddha sighed and said, "Very well, you can leave when you have the ability to protect yourself." Lin Ming nodded and said, although the advanced god tier was powerful, in the eyes of the strongest, it was still vulnerable. "Many thanks, Senior." Buddha lowered his head and said, "Earlier, as one of the strongest, he could naturally address Lin Ming as fellow friend. But now, things were different. As a mere advanced god tier, he could only address Lin Ming as Senior. This was because this was a world where strength was the most important. The difference between them made it so that they weren't equal. There's no need to be like this." Lin Ming waved his hand. He understood that everything in this world was extremely cruel, but he would never look down on anyone just because he was powerful. After all, Buddha was also a pitiful person. "Go outside with Hades for the time being. I want to study the unnatural fate." Lin Ming waved his hand and said, "All right." Buddha understood what Lin Ming meant. He nodded and left Lin Ming's small world. After Buddha left, Lin Ming held the unnatural fate that had helped Buddha, who was initially an advanced god tier, to directly become one of the strongest. The fate should have been something illusory. Yet now, in Lin Ming's hands, it was as if it was tangible. The fate that had been severed from Buddha's body could be said to be extremely huge. It even took up half of Lin Ming's small world. At this moment, Lin Ming's figure had expanded explosively directly across the entire small world, which was why he could now hold the fate in his hands. Lin Ming didn't shrink the fate, because an object would expose its flaws even easier when it was big enough. If it were to shrink, many of the loopholes on it would disappear. Within the fate, power circulated crazily. Lin Ming simply raised his hand slightly and actually broke the fate into two. With that, the power within it directly exploded and rapidly attacked Lin Ming. HMPH. Lin Ming snorted coldly. To think the power wanted to fight to the death with Lin Ming because it did not want to be studied by him. Was it even worthy of making such an attempt? This was Lin Ming's world. The power couldn't advance a millimeter in front of Lin Ming. To think this fate has consciousness. Tisk tisk. Unexpectedly, the fate had given birth to a consciousness. This showed just how pitiful Buddha was. Looks like this world really isn't simple. Lin Ming clicked his tongue and frowned. As he grew, he felt more and more so that this world was not simple. Rather, it was extremely dark. Lin Ming, I will make sure you die a horrible death. A hoarse voice appeared. HMPH. Lin Ming snorted and raised his hand. With that, the fate was reduced to ashes. This fate is also someone's power, yet it can contend with the power of laws. However, because it has always been in Buddha's body, it has become somewhat inferior to the power of laws. At this moment, Lin Ming had also understood the fate. Since it was an unnatural fate, it meant that it had been created by someone. Furthermore, the person who created it also possessed the power to contend against the laws, just like Lin Ming's power of chaos. It seems that I have quite some opponents, though they are just cowards who have hidden well enough. Lin Ming snorted and said, with just this power, you want to fight to the death with me? Lin Ming snorted and the small world quickly absorbed this power. Following this, the power that had originally attacked Lin Ming became the nourishment of Lin Ming's world. As Lin Ming was deep in thought, he left the small world. Senior. Benefactor. Two voices rang out at the same time. Although Hades hadn't appeared much before, he still had some history with the Buddha. He had fought with the Buddha several times before, but in the end, they had been evenly matched, and neither could do anything to the other. Now, looking at Buddha, who was merely an advanced god tier, Hades actually felt a sense of sorrow. This was because he had experienced the darkness earlier than Buddha. Senior, how was the unnatural fate formed? Buddha took the initiative to ask. After all, the fate had always been in his body for a long time and had just been severed by Lin Ming. Therefore, the Buddha paid great attention to it. Now, he desperately wanted to know the answer from Lin Ming. He desperately wanted to know what exactly was the fate that had been in his body for so long. Look, Lin Ming didn't answer Buddha directly. Instead, he raised his hand, and a strand of fate appeared in his hand. This? Buddha frowned. Does this power look like the fate that was in your body? Lin Ming asked. This is clearly it. Buddha said. Tisk. Lin Ming's palm moved slightly, and with that, the fate turned into Lin Ming's power of chaos. How is this possible? Buddha turned pale with fright, and he retreated dozens of steps before falling to the ground. The fate that had been in your body is also based on the same principle. There was someone who had the power to contend with the power of laws a long time ago, and you were chosen by him. The fate entered your body, and thus you became one of the strongest. Lin Ming spoke and put the power of chaos back into his body. This? Buddha couldn't accept Lin Ming's words. Benefactor, please don't say any more. I'm afraid he will go crazy if you continue. Looking at Buddha, Hades stepped forward and said, it will depend on himself. Lin Ming shook his head and said, this was an inner demon to begin with. He could only be free if he released it as soon as possible. If he did not release it, then he would truly be possessed by the demon. Oh. At this moment, Buddha felt as if his head was splitting. He started spitting out blood wildly. He then stood up shakily and fell down with a bang. Benefactor, if you do not act now, he will definitely become a cripple, Hades said to Lin Ming. For some reason, he actually had a pleading tone. It was as if Hades had thought of his own ending. He was one of the strongest. Yet for some reason, he was filled with sorrow. There's no need. I believe in him. Lin Ming shook his head. He had no intention of making a move. Ha ha. The Buddha began to laugh maniacally. As he laughed maniacally, his body seemed to have been sucked dry. Behind Buddha, the already weak light of Buddha became even dimmer. In the end, the light of Buddha completely disappeared. Boom! The void around them began to collapse crazily. As the void began to collapse, Buddha's figure actually merged into the void. This? Seeing the scene, Hades revealed an incredulous expression. His strength is increasing. Hades couldn't help but exclaim. One had to know that after a person went crazy from cultivation, their strength might be stimulated by their potential, allowing them to unleash strength that they wouldn't normally be able to unleash. However, no matter the tier one was at, one's power would not exceed this tier. This was because no matter how agitated an ordinary person was, it was impossible for him to take on an elephant's strength alone. The reason why Hades was so surprised was that the power of the Buddha had directly surpassed that of the peak god tier. It should have been impossible for him to possess such power no matter how much his potential as an advanced god tier had been stimulated. Boom! The space around Buddha collapsed once again. At this moment, the Buddha opened his eyes, and the green lotus he had been sitting on had turned black. Buzz! Phenomena appeared once more in the surroundings, and Buddha's body began to twitch crazily. At this moment, Buddha's face also underwent another change. Buddha's aura, his face, and his strength all underwent a huge change. Congratulations! Lin Ming smiled, then waved and said, now that you have the ability to protect yourself, I won't keep you anymore. Go and lie for yourself. Master, I wish to continue to stay by your side. Would it be all right for me to leave only after I serve you for some time? Buddha lowered his head and said, fellow friend Buddha, congratulations. At this moment, Hades also stepped forward and said, just now, when I went crazy, I suddenly understood a principle. No matter how powerful we are, whether we are among the strongest or not, we are just chess pieces between heaven and earth. Therefore, from now on, I will no longer be called Buddha, but Wushan. Buddha lowered his head and said, Wushan? That's a good name. Very well, I'll call you Wushan from now on. Hades smiled and said, I have to say, fellow friend Wushan, I'm extremely envious of you. Hades added, envious of me? Wushan frowned and asked, that's right. You finally started living your life, but I haven't. Hades nodded and said, it's just that you haven't had the heart to get rid of the things that hinder you. I had simply cut off whatever was the most tempting to me. Wushan said, I see. Hades said thoughtfully, you don't have to follow me for now. You should find Pangu and get an explanation for yourself. Besides, after you've demonized, your strength has improved. Even Pangu has to give you some face this time. Lin Ming said to the Buddha. Pangu? Hearing this name, Buddha frowned. That's right. Go. I'll back you up. Lin Ming nodded and said. He naturally knew that Buddha was quite fearful of Pangu. After all, Buddha had been used and brainwashed by Pangu for so long. Therefore, when he heard Lin Ming tell him to go look for Pangu and ask for an explanation, Buddha hesitated. Yes, master. After hearing that Lin Ming would back him up, Buddha bowed and quickly disappeared. Tisk tisk. Pangu is probably going to be confused this time. Lin Ming chuckled. He didn't seem to mind that the situation was getting out of hand. Then, he brought Hades and Ernest Lin with him as they disappeared from where they were. At this moment, because of Buddha's demonization, some existences panicked. That was because after Buddha had gone crazy, he had become one of the strongest again. At the same time, Buddha was no longer under their control. Someone in the strongest tier was not so easy to deal with. Where are we going now? Hades asked. The void had no space nor time, so they could not teleport through space. To look for your big brother. Lin Ming smiled and said, to look for my big brother? Benefactor, you. Hearing Lin Ming's words, Hades was obviously stunned. Are you that afraid of your big brother? Lin Ming asked. I was adopted by my big brother since I had consciousness. He guided me in cultivation and let me grow. I don't really want to face my big brother now. Hades sighed and said, let's go. Lin Ming didn't say anything else. Hades also quietened down as he followed behind Lin Ming. Boom! Lin Ming raised his hand and a power appeared. Fellow friend Lin Ming. As Lin Ming's power appeared, a voice also appeared. Look. The methods of the two factions are really different. Seeing Hades' big brother appear, Lin Ming said, I'm not sure what you're talking about. Hades' big brother looked at Lin Ming and said, what I'm talking about. The ancient curse will make half of all lives disappear every time it appears. And every time half of all lives disappear, Heaven's order will lose the reason to make a move. Yet, what you want is to create a chance to escape when He's order destroys the world. So your plans contradict. Lin Ming said. The ancient curse is controlled by someone? Hades' big brother frowned and asked, Bro, why are you still pretending to be clueless here? It's clear that your second brother is involved in the matters with the ancient curse and you were the one who gave him the orders. So why are you pretending to be ignorant now? Lin Ming snorted and said, What? Upon hearing Lin Ming's words, Hades couldn't sit still because he didn't know anything about it at all. He really didn't know. Moreover, what dealt him the greatest blow was that he had been infected by the ancient curse. Don't talk nonsense. My second brother is just here. Seeing Hades behind Lin Ming, Hades' big brother frowned and said coldly, I never say anything without evidence. You know very well whether you've done it or not. And I'm only here to tell you that if you want to achieve your best interests through this bet, I can tell you frankly that you will only be used by others. Lin Ming replied, putting that aside. I'm not here to talk about this with you. I need to borrow something from you. Lin Ming said. What is it? Hades' big brother asked. The Kinshin scissors, Lin Ming said. The Kinshin scissors? You. What do you need it for? Hades' big brother frowned again after hearing this name. After all, no one knew that he had this half-saint artifact. But Lin Ming could say it so casually. What do you think? Lin Ming glanced at Hades and said, Fellow friend Lin Ming, I'm very curious as to why you know so many things. Hades' big brother looked at Lin Ming and asked. Lin Ming knew too many things to the point he was a little scared. Even his second brother didn't know about the Kinshin scissors. Yet Lin Ming had said it so casually. I just guessed. Lin Ming simply smiled. Then asked, looking at Hades' big brother. Just tell me if you'll lend it to me or not. This thing is very important. It's not that I don't want to take it out, but... Hades' big brother said with a difficult expression. You know what I'm going to use it for. So you want to refuse, right? Lin Ming sneered. Fellow friend Lin Ming, you're thinking too much. This is my trump card, and I don't want to expose it now. After all, if my trump card is exposed, my ability to protect myself in the future will be weakened. Hades' big brother shook his head and said, What I don't understand is why were you in the New God faction? Lin Ming asked. Because before you appeared, the New Gods and the New God faction had been easy to fool and make use of. Hades' big brother was honest as he said. Now that you put it like that, I understand. Lin Ming nodded and said, Even if you don't lend me the Kinshin scissors, I have other ways. Lin Ming continued, Fellow friend Lin Ming, you now have the ability to protect yourself. Why don't you just stay out of it? Why are you doing the opposite and trying your best to stir up trouble? Why? Hades' big brother looked at Lin Ming and asked in puzzlement. After all, the opponent you're against is not us, but heaven and earth. We've all been involved in these matters too much, so it's destined that we can't stay out of it. But you are different. You are clean and have no karma at all. Yet you just had to get yourself involved with all the karma at this moment. What exactly are you planning to do? Hades' big brother asked again. To help you guys out. Lin Ming chuckled and said. We don't need it. Hades' big brother said directly. I'm taking Hades away with me. Lin Ming didn't answer Hades' big brother's question, but instead changed the topic. All right. Hades' big brother nodded without saying anything else. Big brother, Hades said from behind Lin Ming. If you can live, then do your best to do so. Hades' big brother looked at Hades, then sighed and said, After all, chaos is about to arrive. Hades' big brother added, It wasn't our plan to let you be affected by the ancient curse. There are just too many things in this world that are hard to control. Hades' big brother sighed. I just hope that you won't hate me and your second brother. Hades' big brother looked at Hades. It was a lie to say that he didn't have any feelings for Hades. Big brother. Hades immediately burst into tears after hearing his big brother's words. The heaviness in his heart was finally released at this moment. He had originally thought that he had been abandoned. Forget it. Hades' big brother sighed again as he circulated the power in his hand. And a pair of scissors appeared in his hand. This pair of scissors looked ordinary, just like an old man's scissors. However, when it appeared, the aura in the surroundings changed. Hades' big brother's figure appeared beside Hades. You were never an ordinary life form, to begin with. You are my dark side. Now, I will return you to yourself. Saying this, Hades' big brother gently slid the Kinshin scissors that were in his hand. With that, Hades immediately fell into a deep sleep. Tisk tisk, so you've thought it through? Lin Ming looked at Hades' big brother and asked. He was me to begin with. However, I have always thought of him as a way out. Now, your appearance here has made me come to my senses. Why don't I let myself go? Hades' big brother said. However, now that my Kinshin sisters have been exposed, I'm afraid that the accidents that will happen in the future will be even more difficult to deal with. Hades' big brother took a deep breath and said, So what? Whether you die or not depends on yourself. Lin Ming said. But what you're doing now is right. As long as Hades exists, you won't really die. Lin Ming, can you answer my question just now? Hades' big brother stopped talking about this topic and asked Lin Ming another question. I just feel too bored. Lin Ming smiled and said, You could have stayed out of it. And now, you've gotten yourself involved in all the karma that you could possibly come into contact with. Hades' big brother said, I just want to see what this world will look like when it's in chaos. Lin Ming said, And I want to be the stabilizing rock that stabilizes the world. This was Lin Ming's important thought. You're Kinshin, but even you have something you're afraid of. Tisk tisk, really? Lin Ming clicked his tongue and said. Hades' big brother who was before him was known as Kinshin, the one worshipped by the humans. Have you fought with Lord Laotzi before? Lin Ming asked again. No, but even for me, Lord Laotzi is not easy to deal with. Hades' big brother shook his head and said, Do you think I can beat him? Lin Ming looked at Hades' big brother and asked, You are the best at fighting, and I don't think anyone can beat you. That being said, Lord Laotzi has been planning this whole thing for so long. I'm afraid that fighting won't be enough to solve it. Even if Lord Laotzi dies now, I'm afraid that his plan will continue on its own. Hades' big brother said. Truth be told, fighting was naturally a display of strength among those who were in the strongest tier. However, tactics and wisdom were more important. What is Lord Laotzi planning? Lin Ming asked. I don't dare to say much about his plans, but I can only tell you that it's very elaborate. So much so that I don't even dare to think about it. Hades' big brother said. Tisk tisk. To think there's still something that you don't dare to think about. You've even made plans to destroy all the worlds, including the void. Yet you don't even dare to think about Lord Laotzi's plans. Lin Ming spoke with some ridicule. It's different. Many times it's very easy to destroy something. However, to control or reassemble something is so very difficult. Hades' big brother said. Lord Laotzi's ambition is much greater than mine. He laughed, then continued. Lin Ming, I advise you to form your own organization as soon as possible. That way, you can obtain more information and have more choices in the event of chaos. I'll just join one of you. Lin Ming chuckled and said. Lin Ming, you know what I mean. Hades' big brother shook his head and said. It's still very difficult for you to go against everything alone. He continued. So I have to establish my own faction? Lin Ming asked. Yes. Hades' big brother nodded. I will consider it. Lin Ming nodded and said. He didn't want to be bound by anyone. Even if Lin Ming created his own faction, he would be bound by it. As such, he only said that he would consider it. I say, as your dark side, Hades is actually more righteous than you. Lin Ming changed the topic and said, But this time, your second brother will definitely suffer a blow. I know. Hades' big brother nodded. Now that Lin Ming had undermined the matters and his second brother's plan was exposed, he would definitely suffer a blow. Will you help your second brother? Lin Ming asked. No, Hades' big brother shook his head. To think you people even formed a faction? Tisk tisk, whoever is with you is unlucky. Lin Ming clicked his tongue and said. Hades' big brother did not agree with Lin Ming's words. He shook his head and said. As long as someone from the faction can complete the final mission, it's a victory. Lin Ming, if you want to join someone else's faction and are unwilling to build your own, you can go to Lord Laotzi. Maybe, in the end, he will be able to help you. Hades' big brother looked at Lin Ming, who was about to leave, and said, But I don't think much of him, so what should I do? Lin Ming smiled and said. Lin Ming naturally knew that Lord Laotzi would have better methods, and those the strongest had. However, it was precisely because of this that Lin Ming wasn't even willing to speak to Lord Laotzi. Such a person was someone who would view everyone as a chess piece. Boom! The void suddenly began to collapse. What's going on? Hades' big brother frowned and said. Let's go take a look. Lin Ming said. then brought Hades and Ernest Lin to the place where the void had collapsed. Pangu, you are going too far. As soon as they arrived, they heard Buddha's voice. We both have our purposes. Don't you think it's ridiculous for you to say this now? Pangu also replied. At their tier, how could they be innocent? To think you used a trick to make me get infected by the ancient curse. Purpose? So my purpose is to be infected by the ancient curse and then die. Buddha snorted coldly and said, having completely fallen out with Pangu. There was nothing Buddha couldn't say. What does it have to do with me if you are infected by the ancient curse? Don't let yourself be used by a villain. Pangu looked at Buddha, frowned, and said, if it were in the past, he wouldn't have wasted his breath with Buddha, because the Buddha from before could not pose any threat to him. After all, Buddha had only become one of the strongest by being nurtured with fate, which was part of his handiwork. It could be said that he could even control the power in Buddha's body previously. But now, he could do no such thing. Buddha had now turned into Wushan and had been completely demonized. His current strength was still among the strongest. On top of that, all his strength had nothing to do with Pangu. The current Buddha was not under anyone's control. Even Pangu did not dare to underestimate Buddha's current power. Therefore, Pangu was thinking to sow discord so that he could benefit from it at this moment. Pangu, do you really think I'm a fool? Buddha snorted and said, today, you must give me an explanation. Buddha, don't let a third party take advantage of you. Sensing the appearance of several auras of the strongest around him, Pangu frowned and said, he had been controlling everything as the mastermind behind the scenes. Now that he had been forced into the void and was being interrogated by Buddha, he was extremely angry. Lin Ming, that brat. If I had known earlier, I would have killed him. Pangu thought to himself. All of this was thanks to Lin Ming. Let's go somewhere else and talk things out. Pangu said again. We'll do it right here. Buddha frowned, not giving Pangu any face. Do you want to spar with me? Pangu looked at the Buddha. He knew that they would not be able to talk things out today. I happen to want to know how powerful you are, seeing that you've cultivated to the strongest tier although only being a mere mortal. The Buddha did not give in at all. He nodded and said, good, very good. Pangu took a deep breath. This was the first time in his long life that someone had gone against him openly. I'm just giving you some face. You are no match for me. Pangu spoke again. If Pangu could avoid the fight, he definitely wouldn't make a move. There's no turning back. Buddha knew that he couldn't win against Pangu with words, so he made a move directly. When? Sensing the change in the power around Buddha, Pangu frowned. The demonized Buddha's strength had improved even more. Humph. One strike breaks thousands. Although Pangu had always been the mastermind behind the scenes, his own strength was still extremely powerful. Pangu had not made a move in more than 10,000 years. But now that he did, the void around him was actually as if it could not withstand it. Boom! Buddha felt an incomparable pressure. Absolute suppression. Pangu spoke once more, and the void around Buddha's body began to crazily press down on him. Black Lotus Rage. Buddha took a deep breath, and his body was surrounded by black lotuses, blocking the void that was compressing down on him, splitting the heavens and earth. Sensing the increase in the number of auras around, Pangu no longer hid his strength as his body erupted with power. Boom! As Pangu attacked, the black lotuses around Buddha began to wither, suppress. Pangu raised his hand again, and a wave of power appeared once more. Pangu's power is indeed terrifying. Hades' big brother who was beside Lin Ming couldn't help but speak. After demonizing, Buddha's power could be ranked among the strongest. However, when faced with Pangu, it was still as if he couldn't resist. Never see the sun. Buddha spoke. This was a type of curse that would directly appear from within Pangu's body. HMPH. Pangu snorted coldly. Break. With just one word, Pangu broke Buddha's curse. You are not a match for me. If you stop now, we can pretend that nothing has happened today. At this moment, Pangu withdrew his power and spoke to Buddha. Tusk Tusk, who says that I am no match for you? I was just warming up. Buddha clicked his tongue, unwilling to admit defeat. I'm giving you a way out. But you're just going to refuse, huh? Pangu snorted and said, what do you mean by that? The demonized Buddha frowned and said, fall. Buddha said. As he said this, the power around Pangu's body turned gray. At this moment, Pangu had been eroded. Disease? Pangu frowned. This power was not simple at all. It had definitely reached the level of the power of karma. One had to know that Buddha could not use such power before. At this moment, Pangu immediately resisted the power that was eroding his body. The attack methods of Buddha have improved a lot. It can be said that he has undergone a qualitative change. Hades' big brother said, "The first type of attack is an attack from the outside. The second type is an attack from the inside out. As for the third, it is a karmic attack." Hades' big brother started to ramble. Lin Ming didn't need Hades' big brother to tell him. Back when Buddha was among the strongest before, he had used the second type of attacks. But now, he has achieved the third type. Hades' big brother said enviously. One had to know that it was much more difficult to improve one's attacks than to increase one's strength. Many people might not be able to improve their attacks from the moment they were born to the moment they died. If Lin Ming hadn't appeared and helped Buddha, he might not have been able to improve his attacks to the third type even after till death. Lin Ming, when you have time, can you give me some pointers? Hades' big brother said from the side. I don't have time. Besides, even the current Buddha is not as good as you. I can't give you any guidance. Lin Ming waved his hand and said. At this moment, in the void battlefield, the victor in the fight between Pangu and Buddha was unable to be determined in a short time. This made those who were more thoughtful have new plans. After all, it was very difficult to make use of the current Buddha. However, once he could be used, he would definitely be an extremely good chess piece. Lin Ming, stop watching the show. It's time for my Pangu axe to return to its original owner, right? Pangu's voice pierced through the void and entered Lin Ming's ears. You gave it to me, and now you want it from me. I refuse. Lin Ming spread out his hands and said. Lin Ming, you won't give me any face even though I gave you my inheritance? Pangu frowned. He didn't expect Lin Ming to reject him directly. I will give you face, but I don't have any reason to spit out what you gave me. Lin Ming chuckled. No matter what, Buddha had acknowledged him as his master. Once Pangu had the Pangu axe back, he would definitely be able to severely injure the Buddha in a short time. In addition, Lin Ming also wanted to see if Pangu had other tricks up his sleeve. Therefore, Lin Ming would definitely not return the Pangu axe to Pangu at this moment. Lin Ming, do you really think that I can't do anything to you? Pangu said angrily. The current Lin Ming had already moved too many of Pangu's interests. Therefore, when Pangu faced Lin Ming now, he had an urge to fall out with Lin Ming. Come out. Pangu said coldly. As Pangu spoke, the Pangu axe in Lin Ming's body began to tremble violently. Everyone in the void turned their attention to Lin Ming. To think the Pangu axe is in Lin Ming's hands. This time, the show is even more interesting. The strongest experts were all excited. After all, it was rare for a battle to happen at their tier. Pangu was fighting against the demonized Buddha. And now, Lin Ming was involved as well. Swoosh! Pangu had left some tricks in the Pangu axe, which allowed him to summon the Pangu axe directly. Tisk, tisk. Lin Ming clicked his tongue and made his move at the same time. Lin Ming, it's best if you don't make a move now. Hades' big brother's voice came from behind Lin Ming. Don't worry. Lin Ming just smiled and said. Come back. Lin Ming said coldly. With that, the power of chaos enveloped the Pangu axe. Lin Ming has made a move, too. So Pangu is fighting 1 against 2 now. The strongest experts were discussing. Lin Ming alone is enough to make Pangu suffer. I've experienced Lin Ming's strength before. Even if Pangu fights with Lin Ming, he might not be a match for him. Several voices were heard. That might not be the case. To have been able to reach such a tier while only being moral, Pangu's skills are definitely not bad. Besides, judging from Pangu's appearance, he hasn't used much strength at all. A few retorts also appeared at this time. Senior Pangu, I only want the Pangu axe. If you withdraw this power, I won't interfere anymore. Lin Ming chuckled and said. Lin Ming, do you really want to embarrass me? At this moment, Pangu was completely enraged. Senior Pangu, if that's what you think, I don't mind making a move. Lin Ming spoke again. Humph. Pangu snorted, and actually gave up the fight for the Pangu axe at this moment. Lin Ming raised his hands slightly and took the Pangu axe in his hand. This Pangu actually admitted defeat. Seeing that Pangu had given up on the fight for the Pangu AC, everyone expressed their disbelief. After all, giving up the right to fight for the Pangu axe was like a slap to Pangu's face. Lin Ming, you better remember what happened today. Pangu bore another grudge against Lin Ming in his heart. Boom! At this moment, Pangu, who had been enraged, unleashed his power once again. Open! Pangu shouted angrily and vented all his anger on Buddha. As Pangu's power erupted, Buddha only felt exhausted. Pangu really isn't simple. Hades' big brother who was behind Lin Ming spoke once more. Buddha can't hold on much longer. The other strongest experts could tell that Buddha was in a dire situation. Boom! Cracks appeared on the black lotuses around Buddha. One strike breaks thousands. The phantom of the Pangu axe appeared in Pangu's hand as he said coldly, "Pooh!" Buddha spat out a mouthful of blood. It's over. Buddha can't hold on any longer. The demonized Buddha is already powerful enough. Yet he has still been beaten to the point he vomited blood in such a short period of time when facing Pangu. Pangu is too powerful. At this moment, all of the strongest experts took in a cold breath. Pangu's strength was way beyond comprehension. Both of them were among the strongest. So it should have been was very difficult for one to directly suppress the other party. However, Pangu could do it easily. On top of that, his opponent was the Buddha who had improved in strength. Yet Buddha was still vulnerable in his hands. This proved that Pangu was very powerful. Today, I will make you pay the price. Pangu said coldly. Boom! Pangu attacked again. The current Buddha could not take another attack from Pangu. Master, save me! At this moment, Buddha understood his own situation. So he hurriedly yelled for help from Lin Ming. Lin Ming, you promised me that you would not interfere in this matter. Pangu looked at Lin Ming and said coldly. If Lin Ming made a move, not only would he not be able to kill Buddha, but his reputation would also be completely flushed down the drain. I won't interfere in the battle, but I will definitely make a move to save him. Lin Ming snorted and said, after all, I can't let him call me Mazer for nothing. Boom! With that, Lin Ming directly made a move and blocked Pangu's power. Lin Ming also made a move. At this moment, the onlookers were all interested. The last time when Lin Ming made a move, they didn't know his real strength because the old man was too weak. However, Pangu was absolutely powerful. If the two of them were to fight, they would definitely use powerful techniques that they had never seen before. Lin Ming, today I will no longer tolerate you. Looking at Lin Ming who had blocked his attack, Pangu finally burst into fury and stopped hiding the hatred in his heart for Lin Ming. Oh? I have always treated you as a senior, but it turns out that you can't stand me anymore. Lin Ming chuckled and attacked directly as well. Today I will have to offend you. After saying that, the power in Lin Ming's hand dashed fiercely. Even the void gave off a feeling as if it was about to disperse due to Lin Ming's power. One had to know that the void had no space. Now that such a phenomenon had appeared when Lin Ming had made a move, it was enough to prove his strength. Even the nothingness could not withstand Lin Ming's power. Humph! Pangu axe! Pangu said coldly. This time, Lin Ming did not take back the Pangu axe. This is yours. Although you had said that you would give it to me, not only have you broken your promise, but you've even set tricks on it. Yet, I still gave you face. Lin Ming said coldly. Break, Pangu said. With that, countless attacks appeared around Lin Ming. Lin Ming had used the Pangu axe before. It was a half-saint artifact that could resist the laws by itself. But now, despite the countless attacks, Lin Ming's face remained unchanged. Power of chaos appeared around Lin Ming. The power that could resist the power of laws surrounded Lin Ming, and his power of chaos didn't budge an inch. This? Pangu was also greatly surprised. To think Lin Ming had blocked his attack with the Pangu axe so easily. Hee, it's my turn, Lin Ming said. Hearing Lin Ming's words, Pangu was alert to the extreme. Chaos suppression. Lin Ming said coldly. As he said this, the power of chaos fell. With the appearance of the power of chaos, Pangu felt as if he had returned to being a mortal. And now, because of the suppression of the power of chaos, he felt as if he couldn't even breathe. Suppress. Lin Ming spoke again. With that, the power of chaos quickly constricted. How is this possible? At this moment, Pan Gu was blocking the power of chaos crazily. However, no matter what kind of power he used, the power of chaos did not stop at all. It could not even be weakened. How is this possible? Pan Gu's eyes were wide open as he looked at everything that was happening before him in disbelief. As one of the strongest, he was even one of the top experts among the strongest. He had never encountered such a situation before. Open up. Pan Gu smashed down with the Pangu axe. However, it only stopped the power of chaos for a moment. At this moment, Pan Gu finally panicked. If this continued, the power of chaos would turn him into ashes. How is this possible? Pan Gu has no ability to resist at all. Lin Ming is ridiculously strong. Looking at both parties in the battle, the strongest experts had a feeling that made them doubt life at this moment. After all, Buddha didn't have any ability to resist Pan Gu's attacks just now, and that was the Buddha whose strength had improved. They asked themselves and realized that even though they were all the strongest experts, they couldn't be any much stronger than Buddha. Even if they were, it was probably only by a fraction. Therefore, if they were to be faced with Pan Gu, they could only be beaten. Yet right now, Pan Gu was being beaten by Lin Ming to the point that he could not fight back. This proved that Lin Ming's strength was terrifying. Boom! As the chaos kept shrinking, Pan Gu finally unleashed his strongest strength. Huh? Everyone's expression changed dramatically. Open up! Pan Gu shouted angrily. This is... At this moment, the power of laws burst out from Pan Gu's body. This is Heaven's order. Everyone exclaimed in disbelief. To think Pan Gu is Heaven's order. At this moment, Pan Gu's identity had finally surfaced. What about his mortal body and self-cultivation? Those were pure bullshit. Since Pan Gu was Heaven's order, to hell he would need to cultivate. Boom! With that, the power of chaos was finally blocked by Pan Gu. Lin Ming, I will definitely kill you today. Pan Gu said angrily. Oh? Lin Ming snorted coldly. I've guessed your identity a long time ago. Chaos execution. Lin Ming spoke coldly. Suppress. Pan Gu, on the other hand, directly used the power of laws in an attempt to suppress his opponent. Tisk tisk. I'm going to use my own methods as well. Lin Ming smiled. He had trump cards, too. Execution. Lin Ming spoke and continued. 10,000 arrows. With this, many rules and the power of chaos attack together. Destroy. Lin Ming pointed at Pan Gu and said coldly. This is impossible. Pan Gu looked at his power of laws, which was melted like ice and snow. This is the power of laws. How can your power of rules? Pan Gu said, unwilling to admit defeat. Rules are the power of laws when they are refined to a certain extent. Lin Ming spoke. Everyone, heaven and earth should be broken. Today, let us become our own master. Open up. Lin Ming spoke again. Following this, holes appeared in the void that quickly split in half. From now on, I am the world. Lin Ming had completed splitting the heavens and earth.